Hey Bill, I'm not getting audio. I have the browser audio pod up and I have selected the source. I'm not getting audio. I'm going to go live so you can see.
Governor Cox has been not, he wants to no longer give incentives for companies to come and move into Utah. Like why are we incentivizing these people to come? And this is, to me, the commercial part of it is different. It follows those companies, and there are areas that need the retail and communities that need to look at this. And to me, it's different than the incentive. Yeah, we'll get that word, but how it's applied and anyway,
yeah,
it'll be interesting.
One recommendation is to tie it to actual residential uses, especially affordable residential uses. To say if you got so much affordable housing, you can give so much in commercial development incentives, that type of thing. So that a lot of negotiation going on that. Inclusionary zoning is the next one, and there's an impasse between the development community and the cities. Inclusionary zoning means they want to include affordable housing in zoning decisions that we make. It's done one of two ways. Either the government subsidizes it or the government demands it and the development community subsidizes it. The development community has made it clear that if we subsidize it, if the development community subsidizes it, they want full reimbursement from the government, from the cities. So that's where we have an impasse. We think it ought to be shared, the way it is in Park City and some of the others, where they have inclusionary zoning, but at the same time, they share the responsibility. The government gives some incentives. The development community kicks in a little bit. Annexation, third-party annexation.
When you say government, you're saying always the city though.
City, yeah.
Because,
City
I
or
mean, that's
county.
different when you say government, if you think the state's gonna help us when they're not. So we're stuck paying the bill.
Perfect example, because that is one of the resources that should be available with all the money the state has. Right now particularly, there should be some incentives coming from the state to incentivize affordable housing. So, I mean, we've got a surplus this year,
$600 million.
along with the billion that we've got from the federal tree, federal money tree. We've got annexation, third parties. The very first time we had a judge sustain a third party contest to an annexation. Usually annexations can be challenged by what they call affected entities. Affected entities are pretty much governmental entities. You've never had a situation where somebody across town can come over and say you don't like an annexation. That happened, and so we're looking at both the development community and the cities are concerned about that. Administrative decisions by legislative bodies. They are very concerned that multifamily housing decisions are legislative decisions subject to referendum, and there's been a suggestion that maybe we ought to make multifamily housing determinations administrative decisions by state law. And so, in other words, what you would say is, this is where they go.
Let's just go home.
So basically, you're giving us all the red flags. Right?
You know, you would almost think there's a lot of developers down there at that legislature.
You'd practically think that, would you? And these are just the land use issues, okay?
Yeah.
We've got lots of others out there. There's a lot of others, but these are the land use I thought we'd go through tonight, we'd put through tonight. So that they would like to turn those to administrative decisions, which potentially could not be challenged by the courts, but I gotta tell you that our court has looked at past the label we give it, and I think they'll still take them to a referendum. But anyway, speed of decisions. Last year they put some restrictions, some significant restrictions on plan development or development plan approvals. That's when you get a plat in and you get a subdivision. That subdivision has to be out the door. Building permits have to be out the door within a certain amount of time, and the plan has to be reviewed for that house within a certain amount of time. Otherwise, it's deemed approved. And what they wanted to approach this year is they want to go to the second stage, which is the plat, a site plan. They wanted to put restrictions on the time period it takes to put out a site plan or to put out a plat. Now that varies depending on how complicated it is. We have a very significant subdivision that's coming to you that has taken a lot of time and a lot of effort and probably will take a couple of months to get out. So we think that it's so different that you really can't put a definite time period on those types of approvals.
Wasn't this what they passed last year as far as the 14 days? We have to turn it within, well, no, that was on the inspections.
That was on inspections of
Yeah.
homes, individual homes. This is on subdivision plats and on zoning decisions, on site plans for commercial, those types of things is what they want to hit there. Granted, speed up of decisions, there are some jurisdictions that really flaunt that. And if we had the development committee in the room, I would agree with them on a lot of what takes place there. That there's a lot of significant problems that we have, that we got to fix on our end. We really do.
It seems like that's pretty much all of these issues. The select few who, for one reason or another, don't want to do what they should be doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how does the league balance that? I mean, the league has to represent them too. So sometimes in these discussions, the league seems to me as if they are, not saying a conflict of interest, but that's a difficult discussion to have because they have members of the league who are the perpetrators. And they have members of the league who are actually good faith doing what we need to do. And the result of that is that the state comes down and tells us what we have to do. And so, have we had discussions with the, I mean, I know we can't tell the league what to do, but there has to be some sort of different approach here. Because it's just getting to a point where the state's just going to make all the rules for us.
Yeah, the spin-offs from what the legislators do and the decisions they make up there, we're feeling. cities that are actually doing the things we should, and we are, I hope, doing the things we should be doing. We feel it. And so self-policing is what we've done to date with some penalties. They would like to see more penalties.
So that's kind of like the carrot and the stick with the inclusionary zoning, or I guess with the commercial incentives.
Yeah, and you'll see the inclusionary zoning. There's those 23 items that we've got in our general, that we can choose 4 of them to put in our general plan, 4 to 5 of them, and Chad's going to go over that tonight. And what they're looking at doing is to say, hey, if you don't toe the line and you guys continue to have 1 acre lots within your jurisdiction, then what we're going to do is we're going to take away your B&C road funds. That's one of the recommendations. Another one, and B&C road funds are especially important to us because that's what we use to fix our roads. And so they're looking at ways that they can penalize those cities that don't do what they should be doing. And that's, we've tried to stay away from that, but it may end up in being the case. I don't know.
Well, it's so hard from a political standpoint to explain to residents where we have an affordable housing plan and we need to follow what the state says and we're trying to do X, Y, or Z, and then some other jurisdiction decides that's not something they're really interested in. And so
you see the trend.
Yeah. It's just, it makes it difficult because if we could say, well, if we don't do this, not only are we not following state law, but we pretend.
Aha moments when we actually give them a call on some of these things. Vesting's another one. Oh, sorry.
And they're coming at both levels or all levels they can. So if the city does say, hey, yeah, we'd love to follow these rules, we'd love to not be slow, but city council's a bunch of you-know-whats, and they don't believe that, they don't want us here. They believe they were elected to keep the growth out or whatever they, and they're slowing it down. And so now you see the administrative decisions by legislative bodies, like we'll get them here, we'll get them there, and
remove it from the legislative.
Yeah, just
get an administrative decision.
So that's another one of the recommendations is that you take all administrative decisions and take them out of the hands of the elected officials who change every couple of years. And it makes sense. You guys make the rules, and there should be somebody that applies the rules. There are certain rules that you need to continue to make, but you don't need to make decisions on every subdivision. And there's some jurisdictions where every subdivision goes to the to the city council. That's ridiculous. It shouldn't happen that way. Vesting was one that came about the same way. It came about as a result. The question on vesting came about as a result of in the middle of a 6-phase development. This particular city, requested. Changed the legislative act to require all brick on all homes that were built from that point forward. And the developer came unglued because he had his financing in place. And so he came back to the legislature put into play a law, long story short, that says that any subdivision which is approved, it has the right to be able to depend on the laws that are in effect for 10 years down the road. And so that passed last year. It was a mistake in my opinion because there are many things that change.
Yeah.
And there are some things that need to change. And some of the things are in favor of the developer, not just for the city. And so anyway, that's another one. ADU clarification, you remember this, the state said if you want an auxiliary dwelling unit in your home, we're going to encourage that in the state by saying you have to approve those. Well, there are some cities that are charging new impact fees for that second dwelling. And there are other cities that are saying, well, we're going to count that as an additional unit in the total number of units for your subdivision. So all of a sudden, instead of a single family home, you now have 2 homes, two residential units. So they're going to clarify that. And I know, I'm not meaning to, these are the land use issues that we're dealing with on a daily basis. Short-term rentals are another one that we haven't had to deal too much with, but some jurisdictions do. One of the difficulties with short-term rentals is that in a place like Fruita, Utah, the short-term rentals around the national parks down there are worth far more than what the regular homes are. And so kids that are trying to find homes down in Fruitville or Fruita or whatever it's called, Utah, are having Is it Fruta?
It's Fruta, not fruit milk.
Okay, it's Fruta.
Fruta is on the way.
Yeah.
But that's just one. Tropic is another one. They've got these, the regular average price of a home is this much, and then somebody comes in from California, buys a home, puts a marble countertop in it, and all this, and all of a sudden the values of homes are way up there, and the kids have to move out of the area, so that's a problem. Development agreements, and we just, final is development agreements. Once again, they're having difficulty with some development agreements are reaching over from administrative to legislative in the broadness of what they do. They're changing the zone, changing what you can put in the zone, that type of thing. Those are not administrative acts, those are legislative acts, and they want to clarify that a little bit more. There you go. In just a few minutes, there's a lot more we can
Made up for last time.
Okay, thanks.
So what, a comment on that if I may, just a
Sure.
opinion, change you don't have.
No.
Sorry,
Because I think we council members understand it, but the irony to me of much of this is what Gary said is true, and that is that there are instances of abuse and misapplication among cities. The thing that's frustrating is there's a hesitancy or outright denial of those same kind of issues on the part of the development community. And for every city that's being inappropriate, there's a development group or developer that's being inappropriate, which in some cases is the cause why cities have responded with nonsensical applications is to try to protect themselves. And so, as we talked about this at the recent city manager conference with the league, is one of the interesting things is that many of the stories that are being told when the league's actually taking the facts associated with this. Okay, tell us, Home Builders Association or development community, about this situation in Layton. They go back, this example, we haven't had any, but there's some cities that have. So they go back and look through the details and find out that it isn't at all. There's more to the story, as Paul Harvey would say, and that the facts that were used as to justify the club over the head for the city was not justified at all. But there's no knowledge of that. So my opinion is that, and I think a lot of the cities share it, city managers share it, is that there are some groups within the development committee, just like there are in the cities, which is appropriate, that recognize there's issues and want to solve them cooperatively together. And we need to work to clean up our house, and the development committee needs to work to clean up their house. And I personally think that if the legislative leadership would require that kind of cooperation, most of these things would get fixed lickety split. If there was a direction, for example, that there's no legislation that's going to be considered one way or the other unless you guys have tried to solve it yourselves and come to us with a solution. But there are groups from the Home Builders Association side or the development side, this isn't a negative, it's just a reality, that I don't think are interested in that. They have a crisis, they have illustrations, whether true or not, of city grievances that they can parlay into legislative action without much anybody pressing back and saying, what's the facts around that? And so it's one of the things that you all have experience with. Why foul up a narrative with facts, right? And the narrative is that the cities are cavalier, they're reckless, they're inappropriate, they're whatever. And that allows them to have leverage to change the laws without much independent review. Does that make sense? And that's been one of the frustrations I think that the league's having the cities and the managers had is, if these issues exist, let's sit down and in good faith talk about them, because we all understand there are cities that are making bad decisions, but there's also developers. So we want to, but there are groups, again, that don't have an interest in that because they're getting what they want with no pushback, just crying, oh, here goes the cities again, we need a bill to do this. And so we run it up, we get the appropriate interest to be able to press that, and they pass it, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So there's a change, I think Gary said, but hopefully there was some effort with leadership to try to say there's a better way to do this. Otherwise we end up, I'm talking too much, but like the federal government, that when my party's in power, I'm going to drive home what I want, and when the next party's in power, they're going to I'm going to slash and burn you and take care of myself. And so that's what's going to happen depending on who has power in the legislature, or who, at any given time. Why don't we work together to solve the issues and correct them and then move forward together?
To that point, Alex and I met with the speaker in the House. And the one thing he did say is, he says what would solve a lot of these problems is more collaboration between the cities and the development community, and also those who regulate the development community, the Rocky Mountain Powers, UDOTs, that type of thing. So we have put together a program which we hope the legislature finances this year based on Alex's recommendation for more, and the speaker's recommendation for more collaboration of collaboration groups all across the state, of mayors, council members, not everybody, but representatives from all over the state, Rocky Mountain Power, UDOT, Envision Utah, and to identify what the problems are, not just these types of issues, but the bigger problems, of housing, of transportation, that type of thing, and to be able to talk these things through before they get to this level, before they get to this minute, picky stuff that just kind of kills you. And so there is something going on as a result of exactly what Alex said, recognizing that. So.
Okay. I want to acknowledge Commissioner Stevenson here. And he's asked for time on our agenda, so is this
I asked for time, or somebody asked for time.
No, we just appreciate you being here and giving us an update.
So no, appreciate.
Time's up, Bob.
That's good. I'm going to the jazz game. So anyway, no, just going back to what's, some of you may not be familiar, but the Association of Counties is called UAC, where you got the league, which we work very closely with the league. And in Davis County, we're really not in the subdivision business like realistically the other 28 counties are. But what you find with the other 28 counties is that these concerns that are being talked about impact them just as much as it does your cities, because there's so much county ground available that they're involved with development subdivisions and zoning and everything else that takes place. I think that in the 3 years I've been at the county, we've had one zone change, and that was we went from what's called 1A, which meant one house per acre in the under an agricultural zone. We don't have anything other than agricultural zone, to a 10A, which meant we changed it from one house to one house per 10 acres, which that raised a few eyebrows. But the reason why we did that was because when you're not in the business of developing, we were having people come into areas, especially out west of West Point, where they were basically taking a state road and they were taking an acre piece of ground and separating it off, recording it, running a water line from the main that was out in the road into the ground. That was their development. I mean, that's one of the cheapest ways. I wish they could do that all the time, save a ton of money. And so we had someone come in who wanted to basically do 40 lots. And that's when we just said, no, we can't do this. And part of the problem is because there's no sewer. And so it's all septic tank. And, as these wise people over here understand, if you start putting too much septic into an area, you can turn around and really mess up your groundwater and create some major problems. So that's really the only zoning that we've dealt with in Davis County. But other counties have a whole lot of different zoning things they deal with because of the size of them. So, and please ask any questions you want as we go. One thing that I would appreciate too is that some of these things that I may discuss are, futuristic type things or things we may be looking at. I would appreciate finding things on Facebook as far as it goes, because sometimes within the counties you turn around and start talking about things that we may be looking at. There's 14 other cities that may be interested in what I may be talking about here, and so then all of a sudden, we're opening the can of worms and we're really not wanting to. So some of the things that one of the things we're probably is pressed about that's been a long time coming, and that is dealing with the paramedics. We are running into a little bit of problem. The county did go ahead and is funding basically the next 2 years. One of the problems that we have dealing with the paramedics is that our paramedics are now leaving us. And we're still responsible for covering West Point, Fruit Heights, South Weaver, and then all the county ground. And we're almost out of paramedics to do it. You can't go out and just find an individual who is a paramedic and a police officer at the same time. So we're now working back with the fire departments, actually talking to North Davis Fire right now. I'm trying to cover some of the areas out in West Point in that for us, because this is going to probably happen a lot quicker than what we had hoped, but we're all having that manpower issue with what's existing, not just in the police, but realistically all the aspects of, any job and any industry as far as it goes. But I think the collaboration that took place between the Sheriff's Department and the fire departments throughout this county was actually pretty cool. It was something that hadn't really happened. I know, Alex, I think that if we went back just 3 or 4 years ago, we'd have a hard time seeing this happen, and it has come together as far as it goes. We are going to start, after the first year, start talking a little bit about 911 and seeing what we can do as far as dispatch goes throughout the county to try to bring that. We're one of the very few areas in this state that basically have not come up with a 911 center in a district that basically is ran by. From our perspective, it doesn't matter where it's located. The county isn't the one that will be running it. It'd be a special service district very similar to what Wasatch Integrated is up at the landfill as far as that goes. So it'll be a county-wide ran organization. We are looking as far as expanding our senior services. A centralized part of the county, if you want to look at it that way. So there have been some discussions that have been going on that, and that's still progressing, a little bit with COVID in the way. We're still trying to get that taken care of. We are in the process right now of trying to, and we're getting closer to purchasing the property up around the conference center. You drive up there by where as you can see those wheat fields that are out there. We're in the process of trying to purchase that. There are some hiccups that take place on it because that ground actually is in an HOA. And the HOA is basically the commercial buildings around there. And there are CC&Rs in that are in place. And so we're trying to work through with what has to be done to be able to, in a sense, expanding the conference center onto that property does not necessarily meet the HOA agreements with what's in place. So it's kind of an interesting thing that's a little bit different than ever ran into as far as that goes. We dispersed some more dollars last.
I was just going to say, hey, can we mention what
Yeah, we
took place
dispersed
last
some more
night?
dollars. One of the things that this area, and part of the reason I think that the county leadership became what it is today is because when we were, this group of mayors a few years ago, we were having a hard time getting any type of working relationships with the county government, especially dealing with different funds that existed out there. I mean, you've got your tourism dollars, you've got your third quarter, your Prop 1 dollars, library funds. I mean, these are all these special funds that exist within the county. And realistically, there wasn't a whole lot of dollars being dispersed out, to the different cities is where basically things need to go. And so that's one of the reasons that we've tried to change a few things out there. And so on the third quarter dollars, I think last night we gave out another $18 million. Last year, I think we gave out $16 million. So in the last 2 years, there's been about $34 million that have been put into projects. 2700 West here in Layton is one of them, which I can see that's coming through. Terry, I think that's cool. I'll be curious to see where it ends on the other end as far as that goes. But that's just something that needs to be there with West Davis coming in. We're very fortunate right now in the fact that as much construction is going on, but with Highway 89 being improved, the fire station, being built up there, that's something that's been needed for a long time. And I think that's a joint effort between the city and the state as far as getting that piece of property. Because remember, I was switched to the I think that we have hopefully what I consider to be one of the longest projects ever is I-15 with trying to get that one lane in there. And probably what'll happen within the next few years is they'll end up tearing it all back up and redoing all that once they get doing the one end. So we'll have to put up with that for a while. West Davis going in. You think of what was taking place around, in fact, somebody was asking me this the other day and about the U-turns, through turns that are up there. Somebody was saying something, and I said to him, yeah, it's kind of interesting how much heat that basically the city and the state was taking over that when that came in. But you know what, I haven't heard anybody complain, and as many times as I drive through there, I have never realistically had traffic backed up ever as far as that goes. And these are sometimes what at the time seem like hard decisions, but realistically pan out to be pretty dang good decisions with what's there. And so the dollars in tourism, we've opened up that. I think that we've given the not only the Davis Arts Council, but also the Centerpoint Theater and also the Bountiful Arts Council dollars each year to basically supplement their programs. It's very important as far as I believe in economic development here in this county that we continue to build the quality of life. And the quality of life is for people to be able to live in an area and very close by have a lot of facilities, venues, and different things to be able to do and enjoy in that. And that's one of the reasons that helping these cultural arts groups to do things. Your plaza area over here turned out absolutely wonderful. I believe, Kathy, the county get some money on that too?
Yep.
Sorry, there's so many things that we've done. I'm trying, but I think, we supported that. We sort of supported things in Bountiful with what they've done. And these are the types of things that we're trying to do countywide to continue to grow and help the lifestyle. And it's been because we've been willing to take these dollars that are coming in to the county through the cities to be able to put the dollars back and again try to create more and more economic development, which basically turns around and builds these funds even more to be able to do things. There is some talk, I guess I'm probably the one who's talking about it, but there actually is another fifth quarter or 2/10 out there that the commission can pass, which has to do with UTA. And I believe that's throughout the state. No one's passed that yet or put it in place. And I did bring up a COG last night that we probably ought to start looking at it. What that does is that brings 0.2% on sales tax basically in to be utilized for mass transit type things that are there, which we have to understand that Davis County, I think the census was like 360,000 people. I think you guys jumped up to a little bit over 80,000 people. You take another 10 years, Davis County probably would be up over 400,000. You guys very well could be up close to 99. In fact, actually, I think one of the things that the council has to realize in Layton is that within the next 10 years, and some of you very well may still be on this council 10 years from now, is that when the next census is done, Layton City will most likely become the largest city north of Salt Lake, because we will overtake Ogden as far as that goes. We're getting very close, and it's actually one of these things that we have to, and I keep saying we, I make no bones about it, I'm very biased towards Layton City, but Layton City is really an example. Some of these things that Gary Crane's been talking about, dealing with these land use and that, does not necessarily, Layton's not the bad guy as far as some of these things go. And Layton's been very, very progressive, and it's been because councils have been willing to be progressive and be willing to look at things and see what we need to do to basically rise above and be the leader. It has been kind of fun at the county level, as I've gotten to know throughout the entire state, the different commissioners and different things about the counties and the cities. Davis County is considered realistically the model county in the state of Utah. And when we've talked about it, we've said the reason why is because we have a team of cities, we have a team with the school districts, we have a team with our special service districts, that we all work together. You very seldom hear of any, knock on wood, problems that are taking place within Davis County because of how, instead of basically saying it's my turf, we're saying this is our turf. And we try to work together to try to accomplish everything that we can as far as that goes. And we do have some pretty dang good people in all these different locations. And you guys are basically the leader as far as that goes. What else? I'm trying to think everything else that we've got. We are right now in the process on the Legacy Center. If you're not familiar with what the Legacy Center is, it's where you would have gone down and got your vaccination. You saw when you pulled in there that there was concrete. Talk about decisions where you take a little bit of heat. The Legacy Center was developed originally for those people who happen to own horses, or 2 horses, or why anybody would want a horse in the first place. People who have gone down, there's an equestrian area. Well, the problem is as Davis County has become more and more urban, that we've lost that element somewhat in the county. And so we're, no different than, your pool or anything else. We continue to try to figure out ways that we can become more say, went from the equestrian side, but it was the right thing to do, and actually the timing on it wasn't because anybody was brilliant. We were pretty lucky because the drive-in voting, because of the pandemic, the drive-in vaccination. In fact, we've had actually the national CDC people come out and go through there and say that that probably is the best idea they've seen across the country with what it was. And it'd be great to take credit, but in a sense it was just fortunate that we did what we did at the time. But we are right now doing an RFP to where we're going to possibly spend $40 or $50 million, which we would bond for, which we basically take that entire area to try to turn it into more of a sports complex. And with that, we would be trying to look at regional type sporting things come in, try to, in a sense, St. George does such a good job down there. There's no reason why we can't turn around and come up here and try to start to create different things where we can start bringing in regional wrestling. What's that?
Does that include a pool in that area?
No. No, Farmington's got a pool over there. They can worry about that.
It's not, just had to ask the question.
Hey, we ain't getting into the pool business. But anyway, that's something that we're also trying to do right now as far as that goes. We're spending part of our ARPA money. We put in place about $25 million to put towards doing a sewage pumping stations out in West Point. We have a problem out there with the fact that not only you've got high groundwater, but you also have the fact that trying to get to the sewer plant, it's kind of uphill from there, so we've got to figure out how to do it. So there's a study along with West Point City to try to do that, to help try to develop that area out there. We're all familiar with what's taking place up at the base. We have to continue to be very, very supportive with everything up there because of what's coming in. One thing I do want to go back to, and this is one of these things that with Highway 89, with the fire station that going in there, this is realistically our chance to try to do something with Valley View Drive. And we have a couple of people who live maybe up in that location that are really willing to do everything they can to push, even to maybe get some funding in that. But we have to have the city be the impetus in pushing that through. And one individual told me if it's a matter of trying to get with Carlos and with the Region 1 Director and with Mike Romero up there, and maybe begin talking about stuff, now's the time to do it. So if you guys will kind of put the pressure upon me, I'll talk to the good senator and see if we can try to put something together, because it needs to be done. It's ridiculous that that whole entire area, especially with the new fire station and that coming in, that piece of road is probably one of the worst roads that we have, in the city, and it's going to pick up more traffic, and we have to do something on it. If we wait till after the fact, then it's going to probably fall on the city to try to figure out how to do it. I think if we can get state funds right now, we need to push to do it, and they got a lot of money kicking around, so it'd be a good time. So we got a lot of powerful people in this room too. So anything else? I mean, there's a ton of stuff that's going on countywide as far as that goes. If there's any questions on it, so.
No, but I will comment that when we get back to what he was saying as far as the walking agreement with everyone, when you look at these, like the third quarter sales tax and being able to really have enough money to make an impact versus just a nickel and dime here that doesn't really help. We've kind of taken turns on, like the first half of the shoot, we actually was willing to support Farmington so they could get their road in, which is now, it's coming back to us. It's our turn. And that's where 2,700 is why we're collecting on that. I mean, basically we got it last year and we're getting another one this year, so it'll help fund from Gentile North as well.
So, yeah, I had, Alex, I actually had somebody ask me today about, and I know we talked about this a little bit when the template was first announced. So is there been any movement towards trying to widen, I guess, Terry and Stephen, as far as Gentile goes from basically Fort Lane up to the Fairfield, as far as that goes?
Yeah, there's not, it's in the UDOT's plan, just down the road a ways. There's other discussions, and they realize that edifice is gonna have an impact.
Okay, so anyway, that's something I think, we need to, continue to try to push as far as that goes. I do, as far as working together, the county offices, is one thing that we have done. If any of you want to come down and visit with us, please do. There's absolutely no problem. I actually had, when I first became mayor, there was a complaint that came from a guy named Alan Williams. Are you guys familiar with the name Alan Williams? He lived over on Talbot. Remember when we were redoing that, and it took forever to get that done over there? He was one of the people that continued to voice his opinion about things, which he was probably right. But anyway, I remember he turned around and sent me an email early on, and was complaining about something. And so I sent back, and we kind of went back and forth a little bit, and then the emails turned in, instead of being this adversary thing, kind of so how's your family and all this type of stuff going. And actually, then became more of this friendship, just what's going on, can you tell me about this or whatever. And so I actually, when one of the 4th of July parades, when I was late, which is probably every one of them, was walking down the street, and this guy stops me and goes, "Hey, aren't you the mayor?" And I said, "Yeah, I am. I'm supposed to be at the parade, they're waiting for me." He goes, "Well, I'm Alan Williams." And I just met this guy on the sidewalk after we'd been emailing back and forth. And so, he actually called me the other day and said, "Can I come down to the county and visit with you?" So I spent an hour with him. And what's really fun about these jobs is that there are so many people out there that want to talk to you, and they just want to talk to you. And he kept saying, "God, thank you for letting me come down here." And I'm going, "Oh, it's really no big deal." And everybody in this room is more than welcome. I mean, Terry, you guys, I'd love to visit with you and Paul a little bit, because as I work with Public Works up there, there's things that I can still learn to be able to try to apply both ways. And that's part of what it's important for all of us, is to, as we have our own responsibilities, we still have to be willing to work, with everybody else outside and do different things. And that's been kind of the goal we have at the county, is that, we are basically there as a resource for all the cities, and that's what we want to be. We are not Big Brother looking over anything. We are a resource, and please use us. I think you've seen that as far as it goes. So with that, unless there's a question, go ahead.
Anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the update. That was very informative. I think it's good for all of us to kind of understand, and like you say, the door's always
Yeah, and
open.
there are some good things that we're still working on that I can't even discuss about as far as it goes, that if we're able to pull some of these things off, they can be very beneficial for, and I think, I'll speak for the whole county, because that's the way we have to look at it. And I do compliment the city and the fact that on your city council races, that you guys have city council races, and you have very, very good people who are willing to run and stick their necks out in front of the public. I was actually talking to Mark Shepard last night, and I told him that it was very sad to think that, in a city like Clearfield, which has really become a lot more progressive, that, they had nobody run. There was nobody. And that's not good. We need to have people run and be willing to run for offices. And so I thank you guys in the city, because I think what you showed was very good. So, and you still have, which I hate to openly admit, you still have probably one of the best attorneys in Garside.
Good last minute shit.
Yeah.
We know about it.
But,
You can give me the whipping.
I couldn't pass that up. I've been quiet about you the entire time. I had to come up with something, so.
That's all I got to say, Gene.
So,
All right.
So anyway,
Thank you.
appreciate you guys.
Yep.
Is that something we vote on now? I'm not.
Well, these two, well, these guys last night wanted us to vote on whether one guy was good looking and made a presentation last night. I said, I don't know whether he'll want to know what the vote is. So,
I wanted the definition.
So, hey, and thank you, appreciate you. So, and I would like to see if I could handle that, so.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Okay, take a deep breath now. Let's go ahead and move on then to item number 4, which Chad Wilkinson is in our moderate housing plan report.
Thank you. This is going to look like a lot of text, but we're going to go through it very, very quickly. So that should bring some comfort. A lot of this is just some of the things that are from state code, but just as a summary, each year we're required to come before the council and give a report on our progress on the moderate income housing plan that we adopted in 2019. I'm just going to hit one item on this list. Moderate income housing, just to remind you, is the housing that's affordable for people that are earning 80% or less of the area median income. That's his gross income there, but it's that area, they call it AMI, so we're going to talk about that term quite a bit as we go through this, but that's really what this is all based on. Gary mentioned the state passed a law that's that SB 34 that requires us to choose from 3 or more of the 23 strategies that they set out in state law. We're going to talk about a few of those tonight and what we're doing to progress on each of those. Those are those strategies. I'm not going to go through each of those. Those are the 23 strategies that we get to choose from. I'm going to talk first of all about our progress on the strategies, and then I want to talk about the other component of this moderate income housing report, which is. Let me finish the sentence, and then I'll let you jump in. We're going to talk about our strategies, the progress on our strategies, and then we're going to take just a minute to talk about our supply. One of the things we have to report on is what we've accomplished in supplying those moderate income housing opportunities.
Has our median income changed with the census? Have we risen?
It has changed. Some of the census data has not been made available yet, and that's one of the challenges for this year.
Yeah, what's the median income that we're looking at now?
I think as we go through the report, I've got that number there, but let me talk about some of these strategies, and then we'll get to that. I think Brandon included that. I'm just going to go through it fast. But
It was in the packet.
it's in the packet, yeah.
So
So there's your 80% AMIs right there.
83, but
That's projected.
Let's see, we got.
I think in the packet, didn't it say 83?
We were in the 80s.
Was the
before.
average?
We were in the 80s before.
Yeah.
That's actually okay.
But I'll get that number in a second here. In terms of our strategies, this is one we've talked about a lot over the last year, and it might go back to what we talked about this last year. Well, last year we were talking about this as a strategy, but we adopted it this year. So we adopted this ordinance that expanded our accessory dwelling units out into additional people have this eligibility for accessory dwelling units now. So we feel like we've accomplished that goal. That was one of our strategies. Again, these do increase affordable rental opportunities. We've done just kind of a quick survey of our ADUs, and this is a tough one to capture what the rates are for these, because a lot of these don't ever get advertised. They're rented to family members or things like that. But the ones that we did find that were advertised, we're at about $1.24 per square foot compared to about $1.70 per square foot average for those just standard apartments. So there is about 28% less than what that number would be for a regular standard apartment for these basement type ADUs. So we feel really good about that. That's one that we've accomplished. We feel like we've, in some ways, we can move on to some of these other strategies as we look at other opportunities with our moderate income housing plan. The second strategy that's an ongoing strategy is to work with our providers in Davis County. We've got the Davis Community Housing Authority that has a number of programs. We also support a down payment assistance program that you may be aware of that we each year with our CBG Community Development Block Grant Program. We approve money that goes towards that, $7,500 towards down payment assistance for people to help make those housing more affordable. Those people have to be in that 80% AMI category for us to even consider that. So it is a good program. 16 grants is what we've done the last year. And then we got the 7 grants for the emergency home repair. Now, the emergency home repair is also a very important component of this. We have housing that's more affordable, and a lot of times the more affordable housing is housing that's older. So we've got an older housing stock that needs repair and maintenance to keep them up. So these grants make those, make it possible for these people to make those improvements on those homes and make it so they can continue to live in those homes and maintain affordability. And we've got several neighborhoods where we've taken those grants and applied them. It's been a really good program. Number 3, we continue to, one of the things that the state code encourages is locating multifamily and other higher density housing near transit. We continue to do that. These are a few examples. You're all familiar with them along Main Street or in our downtown, working on projects there to increase our moderate income housing supply within those areas. We have other areas along some of our corridors. We've got our town centers that are connected by these mixed-use corridors, and we continue to have development of townhomes and multifamily apartments in those areas that were designated by the general plan. That'll be an ongoing strategy we'll continue to do, and that's just a quick update on that. Number 4 I want to talk about is parking. That's one of the strategies that's outlined in the state code is the strategy of reducing your parking demand or parking requirements in order to encourage higher densities. We are all familiar with that. Last year we adopted the ordinance. This was a lot of work that was done by our planning staff to do actual on-the-ground surveys of what was being actually used in Layton. It's evolved into what we think it looks like is a very good working ordinance. Now we actually have buildings in the ground now since that was adopted that we were able to kind of look at and monitor. This one here in the red is one that's just over here on Gordon. And all indications say that we did it right, that we got the parking right. So we'll continue to monitor that. That looks like it's pretty good. This is another one that was able to use that lower parking standard. You just approved it a few weeks ago. That's that altitude is what they call it up on Highway 193. Again, not every indication is that we're going to be fine on parking. This one has an interesting component though of the townhomes. That's an area where, if you remember, we did not reduce the parking requirement for townhomes specifically because our on-the-ground survey said we still need parking. And that's an area where we still need to monitor. But by all indications is the multifamily parking, we got that number just right, and that we probably were right in not reducing those townhome parking standards based on some of the things that we're seeing out there on the ground. But again, that's given some more opportunities. We'll have additional opportunities. The apartments that are being built right now over by the new Tanner Clinic, north of Layton Parkway, we're also able to use those reduced parking standards to get some higher densities. And it's interesting to hear that our numbers coincide with what the development community is saying they need for those units, what they've seen for themselves they need for those units. So that's good. I think we've got our code kind of in accord with what they've observed. So these are the projections that we put together, and this is based on some of the original numbers that we looked at from the general plan. This is a total projection for the housing that we need and the various types there. I didn't include the single family number there because we're talking about moderate income housing there today, but these are the numbers of those various types of housing, owner-occupied, townhome rentals, the various types of apartments that we would project we would need in the next 5 years to meet those numbers that we need for the moderate income housing. Again, the projection of the housing needs, this is our projection of the growth of households in that 5-year period, the housing stock that we would anticipate. And then, yeah, that is the projection. I'm sorry, that is a projection number. I think your AMI is in the packet, and I can open that up here in a second, but these are the projected numbers based on increases. So here's what I wanted to concentrate the last few minutes of my presentation on. We have some tools that have been made available to us by the state. The Department of Workforce Services has some tools that allow us to calculate our housing needs for each of these categories. So there's 3 categories: 80% of our AMI, 50%, and 30%. And I want to kind of explain these numbers. As you looked at your report, you notice the number over here on the right-hand side of the screen. But I want to talk a little bit about this actual number. So the way that the state has set up their calculations looks at the total number of units that have been constructed or that are available, that exist, I should say. And then they have a metric that's called availability. Availability means that not only does that unit exist, but that it's available for someone within those categories to rent. So It's a little bit of a tricky number, and I want to just walk through those numbers. We do a really good job on our 80% AMI. So those earning 80%, up to 80% AMI, we have 2,000 affordable units out there, 110, which is what they would consider to be available. So that means that they could be rented today by people that are in that 80% AMI category. Under the 50%, we have 530 affordable units out there. One of the tricky parts here, though, is that based on that metric, 430 units is what we lack for people in that category. Now, what that means is that up here in this 80% category, you could have someone that's earning 65% of the adjusted median family income for the county that happens to find a unit in this affordability category, and they rent it. Could they afford more? Sure, they could probably afford more unit, but they're able to find a unit that's in a less expensive category, so they rent that unit, which then makes it unavailable for a person actually in that up to 50% category. So that's why that right there, that number right there reflects 430 units that are not available. Now it's a little bit tricky because what that says to me is we're actually providing the units, but the market forces are, someone goes through and says, well, honey, we can afford this apartment, but we can actually even get a better deal over here. So we're going to get that apartment even though we can afford a little more, and that takes that out of the pool for somebody else that's earning a little bit less income. So that's a tricky thing. We actually are in the plus on that number, 530, but based on that metric, we have 430 units that are not available for people in that 50% category. And then it goes down. The biggest need is that 600. Now you'll notice that says 600 needed instead of affordable. We actually are in the deficit in both categories in that case for that lowest category of earnings or category of adjusted median family income. So that's a challenge. It's a challenge for everyone. That's one of those challenges that I think are going to take the attention of regional and state partners to figure out how we can get those units. And you can see there's 600 that we actually have a deficit of, and then it's even more of a deficit when we look at what's actually available for rent for those folks out there, because we do have people that are grabbing some of those units that are affordable that are from some of those other categories.
Typically, we'd probably stay in an area where if you got one of those, you're probably not going to go anywhere else.
Right.
Because there's nothing else really for you if your wage is pretty stagnant.
Yeah, and just a real quick explanation of what all that means. So these are the numbers based on the units out there. This is typical. So what we did is we surveyed our apartment providers, both by contacting them directly and also getting on their websites to see what they're charging for these various units. We have a utility estimate just based on some of our utility data from the city, but you're looking at, and these are averages. This is not, they're going to go all over the place, but you can see the total unit cost in this studio apartment example. That includes utilities, so you can take that 125 off to give you your rental amount, average rental amount. If you draw that down to this table on the bottom, what HUD calculates is that for someone to be able to afford a home, so for it to be affordable in their various income categories, it has to be no more than 30% of their income going towards housing. So that's how you can compare that table to the bottom table, is that in that area, for someone earning 50% AMI, this is what their target maximum would be for housing. And it's higher, right? You can see in those other categories, you could afford some of those things. So it moves to the side of the table. You have what they consider to be cost burdened, and it has 3 different categories within cost burdening, and then there's the severely cost burdened. And that's where that problem with that lowest category, that 30% AMI is. You can see it's just so difficult with the rents the way they are now, with the market rate rents, for someone in that 30% and under category to be able to find something that they can afford. And that is even magnified when you have people from other categories going and renting those properties, and it's good for them. They get a more affordable place, but it takes that out of the inventory.
So do we do a wage study as well, so a general wage in the city? Because wages probably aren't going up that fast.
Yeah, we don't do that as part of this report.
And I imagine our federal dollars, the community block grant money, is also tied to our AMI, and so as that goes up, it just
that can help actually when they.
But won't we get less money at that point, as if the wages are higher, and if that average income is higher, we'll get less money from the federal government to help with those grants.
Not necessarily. If that
It's
AMI
not-
goes up, because it's that average, it's the area median income, so as that goes up,
Still balanced,
it's still balanced from, so
But-
it doesn't necessarily take that CDBG amount down, but it does, it decreases our power to use that. For example, $7,500 doesn't go that far towards the down payment anymore. It used to be, but that was a pretty good amount. We're actually, as we come to you this next year, we're gonna be looking at potentially recommending an increase in that to bump that number up so that we can have some additional funding available, because people are telling us, thank you, we appreciate it, but it doesn't go that far for us anymore. So that's just, again, that issue on that lowest category, it's just a tough nut to crack. We're still pretty close to affordability on some of these 50% folks, but you get to these other categories, we're not even in that same ballpark, so tough one.
So, well, I don't know if this answers anything, but it says in the report that based on 2020 Davis County median household income figures, the annual average wage increased 3%, but housing is over 31%.
Yeah, Layton was in that report from the University of Utah, or the Kevin Gardner's, we were 41%.
So we pulled that from the census data, but we don't have an actual report that we create, just what we've reported there. But
Okay.
so in terms of next steps, this is our report to you. We will include this in our report to the Department of Workforce Services and the other state partners that we report this to each year. We are required every 5 years to adopt a new updated moderate income housing plan. So that'll be in the future a little bit. It was adopted in 2019, so we're at year 2. We're going to have 3 more years of this type of, 2 more years of this type of reporting, and then an updated year 5. So are there any other questions that I can answer for you?
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you
very much, I appreciate it. Okay. Next up will be Mr. Price regarding an easement agreement between Layton City and the Utah Department of Transportation for Weaver Lane.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, Resolution 2150 authorizes the easement for Utah Department of Transportation. Let's see if I can pull this line up. So as you remember, in July of 2010, Case Creek Estates Homeowners Association dedicated 16.51 acres of property to the city, and it is intended to be open space and then a park when it's appropriate. And this year, Utah Department of Transportation desired to obtain the perpetual easement that you see here. It's just about a half an acre altogether, and they want to obtain that easement so they can build a trail associated with the West Davis corridor. That trail will be part of a 10-mile trail that goes from, from Immigration Trail to Legacy Park Trail, basically from West Point to North Salt Lake. And this is very beneficial to the city because in all of our plans for the park, we would have a perimeter trail around this park, and this allows UDOT to build that section of our trail. So it helps the city as well. As part of the agreement that the mayor will be signing, it encompasses all of the encumbrances that were included in the original deed of property to the city from Case Creek Estates. And so all of the open space requirements are also included in UDOT's easement to make sure that they are protected. UDOT's trail will be constructed and maintained by UDOT in the future as part of the overall corridor. Do you have any questions?
So does this move that park up any higher on a priority list to get that park done?
You know, we have several parks that our residents have been asking about. This is one of them. Boynton is also one, and also one up by the new fire station. Have been parks that have continually come to the top of our list. And we have not made a determination of what's next. We typically make a recommendation as we get funding. and then the council will make the final decision.
Because this one's been at least 11 years in the making. So
Yeah, but they,
Boynton's been that long too.
Boynton's been a while. Some of these areas, the people up on the east side of town have been waiting a long time for a park on that side of Highway 89.
no, this would fill the gap out west too, so.
Are they fenced?
They will have a fence that protects the barrier from the trail and the highway, but it will not impact our park.
So inside, it won't be a fence.
Yeah, we'll have a soft boundary from the trail into our park.
Yeah.
It's less money we have to shell out. What I see.
And so Dave, will this trail then, UDOT's building this, when you get over to the other side of Weaver Lane, the city's gonna take care of the trail that sits on that open space for that HOA, correct?
No, the trail that UDOT's building will go across the entire western, it will go across all of the western part of Layton City. And we will have an overpass right up in this area right here that allows the people to move from this area over to the west side, and then the trail will be on the west side of the West Davis corridor.
Okay, because plans I have show the city putting a trail in that piece of property to connect to the,
And that will be our trail.
that will be.
Yeah, that's an extension of this trail right here, the Case Creek Trail. And that will come down and cross and then go to the overpass that leads to the West
And
Davis.
they're now saying an overpass, because when I talked to them about a month and a half ago, they were gonna do an overpass.
The last I've heard, it was still an overpass, but again, it's a
They
moving
said they
target.
changed their minds, but, so.
So we'll have to reach out.
I haven't heard that, Dave. That would be extremely challenging to put an underpass right there
Yeah.
with the amount of groundwater that's in that area.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is been a above ground crossing for a long time.
That's what I found, that's what the map showed, but then they came back, and when we, that neighborhood met with the development team and everything from UDOT and Wasatch, or Farmington Bay contractors, they said, no, they changed it to it.
We'll try to reach out and find an answer for you.
Okay.
Anything else? Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Okay, two more items here, but let's go ahead and proceed in order with the discussion on the communications. Which, Alec, I think you're taking that, right?
Yeah, I'll initiate it. The staff is on a pretty consistent basis working to try to keep our communications systems vibrant and effective, and sometimes they end up, the things get down a little bit neglected, if you will. And so we engaged with IT staff and with our communications staff and management services. We also know that you guys have had some recent discussions as well, and had some feedback from the community about the need to make some adjustments. And so what we've done is the last several weeks, the staff has worked hard to try to make some adjustments or changes to freshen up the site. We wanted to present some of those ideas to you this evening. Some of them have been implemented and can be unimplemented, but at least the staff level felt like they've been positive. I wanted to show some of those to you tonight and get your feedback and direction on what we feel like we're going in the correct direction, and also any additional suggestions that you may have. So with that, I think Tracy and IT are going to initiate that. We'll try to move through it quickly.
Given the amount of time we have, I'll just let Chris show you some of the changes that they've been working on the site. I guess just to point out a few of them right on there. Coloration of the Utopia. In that menu along the top, we changed some colors as you highlight them to make them stand out more. And then in the center, it was researched by the communications team that providing a big search box in the middle solves a lot of your problems with navigating around the site. If you talk to people, instead of trying to hunt and peck in the menus, you just type in what you want there, and we're working on developing that so that it hits things more efficiently, I guess, than what our old search did. And then
down towards the bottom, adding maybe, I guess what you could call an updated look as far as using some buttons for some of the most popular areas. You remember before we have, or currently we have kind of 3 boxes, and we can change those a little bit, but changing it over to a more of a button look allows it to be a little more accessible. Then also, before we had the Facebook feed over here on the right, but it was only in there occasionally, and it was if someone didn't have some other event, and from time to time those events would get outdated. We rely heavily on the departments. That's part of the way it's organized, to keep all of their department information updated, especially if they put it on the home page. And so proposing to just put the Facebook feed, which you'll notice was updated today, and it's updated almost every day with events, new information, meetings, and so forth. If we keep that feed on there, then it keeps this site having a more up-to-date look with current information.
So I know that this is just to show us, but please, please, please make sure words are spelled correctly. Because council and Wasatch are misspelled in that little feed on the city council. So,
oh, in the Facebook feed here?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
so I just think that looks bad for a city when we can't spell a word right.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so to clarify on your feed here, then, regardless
City Facebook feed, right?
Yeah, so whether it be the fire department, police department, or Parks and Rec, whenever they post, it will come up and that will be refreshed then as they post? Is that what you're saying?
No, this is just the city Facebook feed. So if
The
police
city
is doing something on their own Facebook
Well, I think
page, that's not part of the city page, right?
Okay, now, I just want to open this up just quick, like I know we're running out of time, but was that not one of the things that you guys felt like needed to be refreshed or not? I mean, I know that you wanted the Facebook posts on here for the city, but did you feel like the individual departments also needed to feed to it? Or is it even possible?
The only other department that has a Facebook page separate from us is the police department. Okay?
With the buttons, Tracy or Steve?
And so the other departments, we've got a communications committee, and each department has at least one representative. Some of them have 2 because of their varying activities, for example, Parks and Rec.
Right.
And so we meet at least monthly. We garner the information from those departments, and then we determine the posts, the timing, and those things. Now, a lot of times when the police department will post something on theirs, we will share that.
Right.
If it's
And I guess
applicable.
that's
So
what I'm trying to
and
say.
it
So
does
it
get
does
there,
look like
yes.
we're one city.
Correct.
We're not individualized.
Correct.
Okay.
Or the buttons, are they part of an analytical, we went in and
Yeah, we have analytics that we pull, and we looked at the top 100 hits of our site, and the top 10, all come from the top. These all come from the
It
top
wasn't
10.
Clint's bio?
It wasn't Clint's. Alex was like second, but he said he didn't want a button.
That was like, it was a hang Alex.
Oh, that's a whole different website, just
I don't see a robot.
Thank
So
you.
you're saying-
That was my only question.
I think it looks
Okay.
lots better.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is exactly what we were
The other,
looking for.
one additional thing that for aesthetics, which could have been improved, and has been, is we're developing a bank of pictures. Actually, we're gonna think about running a little contest to get photos from the community and have it refresh, and then as we have around holidays, in a week or 2 on either side of the holiday, is to have those kind of pictures, like Thanksgiving, a fall calendar, 4th of July, patriotic.
That'd be great.
And just refresh these all the time.
That's a great idea. I would make sure that the pictures that we use are, if we're gonna do that, then we should do that and not have, I know, noticed we've had some posts where it's a parade post and that is not Layton City and that's not a Layton City parade. And it just, to get that hometown feel of, yeah, they're really paying attention. The city's really, that
Absolutely.
makes make sure our photos are local photos if we're gonna do anything outside. It just,
The search bar is, I think that's a great idea.
How do you do?
Right in front
On those Well, on the main landing page there for your photos, I know currently you have it kind of rotate. Well, you have say like 5 or 6 photos and it kind of rotates through. Are you still thinking of that, or are you just thinking stagnant photo and then
Well, no, we
change
still
the
have,
stagnant?
we'll have 6 photos. I found that like, we used to have like 17 different photos and they rotate and switch every like 15 seconds or something.
That's too slow.
But that caused the site to download really slowly because it had to load all 17 photos in the back of the end of someone's browser. And so we have just one photo that gets loaded each time, but every time you come back to the home page, it might be the same photo, but it might be one of the other 6 that we have or so.
That's what I was getting at. Very good.
Cool. Thanks for
Yeah,
that.
thank you. Huge difference.
Yeah, go ahead and play with it and search it around and take feedback, and we're happy to take any input to try to refresh and update it. And we looked at a lot of other sites, state site, a lot of city sites, government sites, and a lot of them are going to this kind of a approach with the buttons and the search bar, which is a big one. That everybody said was very popular and very helpful in navigation. And so,
In the prior couple of weeks around Veterans Day, we had a lot of, it was a veterans theme, and all those shots were from Layton. Some of them were even the older shots were the veterans then at the Veterans Park, the old black and white. So it was a fun project.
I got tons of them from this last one. What I was going to ask though is for folks that, especially as we get into the ADUs and as like the average citizen that really isn't savvy to the different building codes or requirements. So within that search, then, have you guys played with that to make sure that's simplified? I mean, obviously the developers get it,
Yeah.
and I get the fact it doesn't meet the metrics on here to really have that as a button. But I think out of any complaints I always had was it was like I can't find where the rules are. Or, I didn't know it because I looked at it and it wasn't listed. When in fact we have several areas where it's listed, right?
We're going to do some navigability tests and do some.
I think that's probably one of the key things.
For sheds or basketball hoops or
Yeah.
those sorts of things that
Yeah,
are
that are-
common.
Yeah, that are common to the residents. I think that's the biggest hurdle that we've heard.
And you can't put a basketball hoop on your shed if you're eating.
Sheds, basketball hoops, kayaks, picnic tables.
Just put up 8-footers.
Fireworks.
Thanks for being responsive.
Proactive.
You know, that's, you can't say enough about that, and it's nice to be able to say a few things and have people respond to it.
Yeah.
You know, and so, appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That's one of the key things from our little meetings last year. Okay. Anything else? Anybody want to add? That takes care of item number 6. Item number 7, we really don't have any time for, so I think we'll forego that meeting. And we actually have time for a break. Although, I will tell you on the mayor's report, real quick, like I was going to bring up what Bob shared with us. In addition to that, interesting enough, Open Doors, they have been kind of like the state's model on the way that they really handle a lot of the COVID funding and getting assistance, rental assistance out. And so I think that, I know it was kind of like questionable early on, but I mean, these guys have really stepped up the game, and apparently the way they responded and acted and geared up for it, now the state's actually going to take their model and run it. So I thought that was pretty cool. I have a couple other things, but I don't know. I'll still give you time to make your questions for the Actually, I may repeat this over in the other meeting just because I think it's good, but when we talked about Open Doors, they have their respite visit, which is people that are really at their wits' end and needs to have relief. They have their child care center, crisis center, and last year their numbers, they had 736 visits, which equates to like 2,300 man hours. what they help there. And the actual serious crisis one where it's like a bad situation, there was 17 of those, and it was over 113 hours. And the one thing that I want to make clear is, and one thing that maybe we can kind of help push is, most people don't realize that their child care center is there for people that truly don't have any contacts or have family or anybody to rely on. Case in point, we have a lot of military folks. They don't have family where they can say, hey, can you watch my kid while I run to the dentist, right? So I think I'll share this number with you guys, but I think we can kind of help get that number out there so people realize that, hey, if they need somebody to watch their child for 3 hours and they just don't have the means or know of a sitter, that is available. So I know you guys work a lot with folks that are in that arena, so I'll make sure this number is available, but it's 801-773-0712. And if you get extension 0, you can go in and book a time. And like I say, there are times where you don't even need an appointment if it's a crisis situation. You feel like you're at your wit's end and ready to do something wrong, then take a child in. So I think that's good if we can kind of help spread that word, especially as we go into the holidays. Anyway, okay, this wraps up our work meeting, and we'll adjourn for a couple minutes.
Hey, how are you?
Yep.
Please rise and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance after me. Our Father in heaven, we come before Thee as members of this community, grateful this evening for the liberties that we enjoy, grateful for the rights that Thou hast blessed us with. We're grateful, Father, this evening that we're able to discuss the business of Layton City, grateful for those who serve in the city, grateful for those who protect us, our first responders, and those that serve our basic needs here. We're grateful for this opportunity to discuss this agenda. We ask that Thou would please bless us with wisdom, that we will be able to have as we normally do, a civil discourse and come to good and wise decisions. And these things, Father, we pray for and do in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Morris. Okay, Council, we do have some minutes that we need to approve, so hopefully you've all had a chance to look at them and see if there's any corrections or not. If so, please let us know now. Otherwise, I'll look for a motion to adopt the minutes that are listed on our agenda.
Okay, I guess this is my job. Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes of the Layton City Council work meeting of July 15th, 2021, the minutes of the Layton City Council meeting of October 7th, 2021, and minutes of the Layton City Council strategic planning work meeting of October 21st, 2021 as written.
Okay. It's been moved in second that we adopt the minutes as Councilmember Fitzpatrick presented. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. I failed to acknowledge the fact that Councilman Day is not present with us here tonight, but he was going to try to call in. I'm not sure if that has happened or not, but it has not. Okay, I know he was kind of in a remote area and was going to do his best, so we want to excuse him then. Okay, we'll move on to the second item on our agenda, which is our municipal events. So, Mr. Thomas, do you have any?
Tons.
I figured you would.
Everybody get on your dancing shoes. We have our holiday lighting, which will be lit on Monday. That's this coming Monday. The lights will go on about 7. We have a program that will start at 6 over at the high school in the auditorium. And then as soon as that's over, which it'll be over just before 7, they'll walk across the street and then light the lights. And if you meet right here at this junction where
between the fire department and the Davis
between
Arts
the fire
Council?
department and the park there, that's right where they'll congregate and then light them up. And then after that, anywhere you go, you'll enjoy the light. Other than that, lights on Monday, concert at 6. And we've got on the 7th, for those of you that want to go back a few years, we have the Hayrides. And that takes place over here to the edge of the pool by Starkey and Wendell Snow, the playground there. They'll come into there and you can get on and they'll take you through the lights and come back and drop you off. So that's on the 7th. And they start 6 o'clock. And they go till about 8, till everybody has gone. But it's usually pretty crowded, so be prepared to wait a minute, wear gloves, dress a little warm, bring a blanket. So that should do it, Mayor.
Okay, that's quite a bit. Sure, go ahead.
Is somebody going to do the Polar Express thing for the Davis Arts Council?
Yeah, that's just what we were discussing here.
Well, I don't know much about it other than I was at the museum board meeting today, and they're going to do Layton trains, so it'll kind of follow the Polar Express thing. They'll be open on the 30th, 1st, and 2nd of December. They're going to keep the museum open till 8 o'clock at night, and they're going to have some train exhibits that go along with the Polar Express theme.
Okay.
Mr.
So
Steve.
I'm familiar with Polar Express. Are you? Because you're welcome to
No,
speak.
no, I'm just the interfaith concert. I was just.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to? Okay. So what Councilman Morris wanted to make sure that you're aware of also is this Sunday night is the interfaith concert over at Layton High School as well. And I believe that starts at 7 p.m. And again, that's one of those concerts where once they're finished, then there'll be a candlelight vigil that will come across the street. And they actually light up the nativity scene that's over by the seminary building. So you've got 2 nights full of lighting events for the city. In regards to the Polar Express, what that is that's the Davis Arts Council. They do what they call their Active Pages program. And if any of you attended the program they had at Halloween where they did the storytelling down through the park, well, this is very similar, but now it's going to take place in the lighted park. So amongst all the Christmas lights, they will tell the story of the Polar Express, and this is done by professional actors, and it's very entertaining and good. And at the end of it, you will be receiving, I guess, a commemorative Polar Express book as well. But in order to participate, this is a free event, but the Davis Arts Council needs you to go onto their webpage and pre-book your timing so that they can make sure that they coordinate the groups accordingly. So those dates, it's going to run for 3 nights, which begins November 30th, and then the 1st and 2nd. So it's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And at that time, also the Layton City Rotary Club will be selling hot chocolate in the park. And in fact, they'll be opening up, I think, Monday night as well. So there's a lot happening. We're going into the holidays, but mentioning the holidays, Councilman Blockson's going to tell you about another program they have.
Yeah, Davis Arts Council has their Deck the Halls this year, which is taking place at Layton High School's auditorium. They have a Caleb Chapman's Crescent Super Band. It's a local band, and tickets they begin at just $10. So it should be a pretty exciting show. I know that Davis Arts Council is very happy with getting this show and hope to see you out there.
Very good. Okay, I think that pretty well concludes our municipal announcements for now. We will go ahead and move on then to our verbal petitions, our verbal presentations as well. And we're very honored tonight to have 2 different organizations that help out the city in many different ways. And so we'll first witness the swearing in of our youth council. So all the youth that are involved in that, if I'm not sure is Karen, let's see, Kim is going to take care of the swearing in, but would one of the counselors come up and maybe announce the names of your students that are here so that we can make sure that they are acknowledged? You're welcome to go to the mic over here. I know one of the members is Erin Harding, who is not here, and while they're getting their thoughts together there, I thought I'd mention that it's kind of cool. She's actually participating in a national Irish dancing competition. So she's representing the Layton City here in a national competition. So I think we would like to wish her all the best of luck this week. So do you want to just have your students come up and then we'll swear? What we'd like to do is have them come here and Kim will come down and swear them in. And then Youth Council, we'd like to shake your hand or elbow bump, however you're comfortable with, but individually, I think the council and I would like to congratulate you. So.
I do want to swear in the advisors as well as the youth. That was something that was done last time. And I did
Yes.
not want to continue.
Sure. Yep.
Okay, so I am Charlotte Esplin, and I am a youth advisor along with Karen Smith and Nellie Stratton. And our youth mayor is Everest Stratton. So let's have you, when we see your name, why don't you just come up this way? Our youth mayor pro tem is Kara Baldwin, and she is excused this evening. Our youth city recorder is Danielia Borja. Our youth city manager is Bryson Esplin. Youth publicity chair is Jordan Andreessen. And co-chair is Ellie Bischoff. Our youth service director is Will Day. And our youth members are Emery Ingebretson, Aaron Harding, and Rin Houghton. And we are excited to be working alongside with the council and learning and growing as we go.
Okay. Okay, with that, Kim's going to go to the podium and swear you kids in.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the State of Utah, the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Utah, that I will discharge my duties of my office with fidelity. Congratulations.
While they're all working on getting back to their seat, they're actually going to be excused along with their parents in just a minute. But I just want to take the opportunity to thank especially the three advisors who have really helped get this program back on track. About a year ago, we decided that it had kind of lost its way from being part of the council and working with learning about government. And so they've gone back on track with the help of the advisors. The kids have all been on board. They've helped rewrite bylaws. We've started a mentor program. As council members, we'll be mentoring with the youth. They're reaching out and learning about the departments. We did kind of a tour of the campus here the other day to give them an idea of what's on site here. But these are our future leaders, and whether they become an elected official or whether they become a public servant in a job, they're learning, and we really appreciate the time and effort they put into it. And parents, thank you for getting them here and supporting them in this activity as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, and well stated there. I know that you kids have a nice social planned, so we'll give you a moment here so that you don't have to sit through the entire meeting before you enjoy that. So if you'd like to go ahead, I'll excuse you now if you'd like, is what I'm trying to say. So thank you again for all your dedication here to the city.
You have to stay.
Yeah, Will.
Okay. While they're departing the room, I know that we've got another great group of folks that are willing to step up and service our city. And in fact, it's in a more serious manner. And with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Chief Kevin Ward, who is going to acknowledge our Community Emergency Response Team, AKA known as CERT. And it looks like Miss Natalie Thoman's also going to join you. So
yes,
very good.
She will. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Layton City is blessed to have outstanding fire, EMS, and law enforcement services. In the event of a disaster, public safety personnel will undoubtedly be overwhelmed by the response necessary in the community, even through our robust mutual aid. This is where the concept of having trained, certified community emergency response team members, or CERT, bridges the gap. The CERT program educates volunteers about disaster preparedness for the hazards that may impact their area and trains them in basic disaster response skills, such as fire safety, light search and rescue, team organization, and disaster medical operations. CERT offers a consistent nationwide approach to volunteer training and organization that professional responders can actually rely on during disaster situations, allowing them to focus on more complex tasks. This is accomplished through 9 training modules, the last of which involves a simulated disaster simulation in which trained CERT members now must put their training in action. Layton City CERT program is led by Layton Fire Department Public Education Specialist Natalie Tholen, who's joined me up here. We are blessed to have Natalie lead this program. She's been recognized for the state of Utah for her involvement with CERT and another ancillary program called Fire Corps. Over the years, Layton City, through its volunteer instructors and fire department staff, have trained thousands of our community members in the CERT program. We want to thank our instructors for this class: Floyd Gowans, Michael Tholen, Bruce Talbot, Jesse Seeger, Sandra Moss, and Carol Childers. Tonight, we're going to recognize the latest graduates of our CERT program that are willing to step up and volunteer and serve in their community in the event of a disaster. As I call their names, we'll have the graduates come forward, be recognized by mayor and council. And then once you come up, just proceed after recognition and head to the lobby and you'll receive your equipment. So our graduates: Mark Vanderdoes, Cody Wilson, David Merkley, Wynn Harrison, Cheryl Cummings, Dorothy Cummings, Jonathan Mosier, Annette Christensen, Dave Nielsen, Viola Elder, Christopher Elder, Devin Neff, Tara Jensen, Camille Tuller, Adam Harmon, Benjamin Ship, and Scott Ellis. We thank you for your willingness to serve within our community. Thank you.
Okay, again, I just have to say thank you very much for taking the program, for going through that. I know it's a lot of hours, but it's well worth it. And certainly should we ever have a disaster, we know that we've got good folks out there who know what to do and how to communicate and to be able to really take care of one another, because that's what truly makes a community. So anybody listening online, if you have not taken the CERT program, I'm going to highly encourage you to, because it just makes everything goes so much smoother, and it will help you and your family as well as the city. So again, thank you very much. Okay, that concludes excuse me, I am not done. I actually have a proclamation that I would like to read regarding small businesses. Small Business Saturday, in other words, shop local. Whereas the government of Layton City, Utah celebrates local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and community. According to the United States Small Business Administration, there are 31.7 million small businesses in the United States. They represent 99.7% of all the firms with paid employees in the United States that are responsible for 65.1% of the net new jobs created. And this is taken from 2000 to 2019. And whereas small business employees, 41.1% of the employees in the private sector of the United States, 88% of the U.S. consumers feel a personal commitment to support a small business in the wake of a pandemic. And 92% of small business owners have pivoted the way they do their business to stay open during a pandemic. And whereas 97% of consumers who shop on Small Business Saturday agree that shopping at small, independently owned businesses support their commitment to making purchases that have a positive social, economical, and environmental impact. And 85% of consumers who shop on Small Business Saturday, we need you to encourage friends, families to do so. And whereas 56% of the shoppers report they shopped online with a small business on Small Business Saturday in 2020. And more than 50% of the consumers who reported shopping small business endorsed a local business on social media or shopped at a local business because of social media recommendations. And whereas Layton City, Utah supports local businesses to create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our community. And whereas the advocacy groups, as well as public and private organizations across the country, have endorsed that Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. So now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Joy Petro, Mayor of Layton City, along with this Layton City Council, do hereby proclaim November 27th, 2021 as Small Business Saturday and urge the residents of our community and the communities across our country to support small business and merchants on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year. Thank you very much. Okay, we will now move on to our citizens' comment of our meeting, which is item number 4 on our agenda. Again, this is where the citizens are welcome to come up and make comments. If you're representing a group, we like you to, I'm allowing more time, but if not, if it's just an individual comment, please don't go over 3 minutes if possible, because we'd like to make sure everybody gets a chance to voice their opinion. So the time is now yours. Sure. Oh, make sure you state your name and address for the records.
Okay. Hi, my name is Amy Mata. My address is 1174 Milton Avenue in Salt Lake City. And I'm a volunteer with the Humane Society of the United States. And I am here to ask the council to consider passing a humane pet store ordinance. And what this would do is prohibit pet stores from selling puppies that are sourced from puppy mills. Puppy mills is a high volume dog breeding commercial operation that puts the profits of the business over the welfare of the dogs. Some of these puppy mills will have 3,500, almost 10,000 animals. This is not a hobby breeder. It's strictly for profit. Dogs are kept in small wire cages and are given food and water. And that is it. They do not get to exercise. They never see a vet. And once they no longer breed, they are disposed of, which I will not go into. Approximately 500,000 dogs are kept in puppy mills in the United States. And the majority of the 10,000 suspected puppy mills are in the Midwest. And what happens is pet stores will go to a puppy broker and place an order for a Shih Tzu, a Husky, a Doberman, what have you. The broker then goes to the puppy mills, fills the order, puts all the puppies in a truck, and are shipped out west. So what I am asking for is the council to pass an ordinance where pet stores could only adopt out dogs from shelters and rescue groups. Over 400 cities and towns across the country have passed such ordinances, including Kaysville, which just passed an ordinance last month, and 5 states. Utah has failed in last year to pass a state ban. And so we are working with individual cities across the state of Utah to pass an ordinance. And that's all I'd like to say today. So thank you for your time and all your hard work on council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
Buenas noches.
Good evening, guys.
Mi nombre es Ana Lilia Pérez.
Her name is Ana Lilia Perez.
Vivo en Cedarwood Park.
Her address is Cedarwood Park here at 189 South Main in Layton.
Vengo nuevamente aquí
She's coming here once more
a pedir de su ayuda,
to ask for your guys' help,
ya que no he recibido de respuesta
as she has not gotten an answer,
del señor Michael McConkie.
if she has not gotten an answer from Mr. Michael.
He dejado textos.
She has left them texts.
Cuando hablé con él me propuso que iba a pagar las trailas, mi casa.
When she last spoke to him, he proposed that he will pay out the mobile homes
O me iba a remover
or to remove them and place them somewhere else.
a un parque. Hasta ahorita
At this moment,
no
right
le ha
now,
dado solución.
he has not given her a solution to the problem.
Yo he estado accesible
She's been very accessible towards him
para cualquier solución
for
que él
any
me dé,
solution that they might come up with.
pero tengo un mes que no me contesta los textos,
She has over a month that he has not responded to her.
no me contesta las llamadas.
No phone calls, no text.
No sé, ya estoy desesperada, no sé
At
qué
this
voy a
point, she
hacer.
is very
Yo tengo que
desperate,
salirme en marzo,
and she has to figure out what to do because they have to remove them by March.
pero ellos no me quieren dar una solución.
But they won't give a solution to her.
Quisiera de su apoyo para poder
She would like a little bit of your guys' time or help to get contact with Miss Michael
o directamente con el Dr. Winkle,
or directly with Dr. Winkle.
porque ya no
get an
creo
answer.
en él,
Because at this point, she does not believe what they
en
say.
Michael. Ya no creo en Michael McConkie para poder tener una conversación.
She does not believe anything that Michael McConkie has to say at this point because he is not responding to anything.
Gracias.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry. Do you want me to make a comment or do you want to? I know what I've requested from them. And so, and they have failed me as well. So I know Mr. Jensen here has been dealing with us and probably has more of an update. I have a different update, but go ahead. Well, is there more of you that want to comment on this topic? Okay, then I'll tell you what we're going to do is let's hear all the comments and then we can respond. Okay, but if there's anything different, then certainly I want to hear that as well.
Hi, my name is Sergio Trujillo. I live in the same spot, the Cedarwood Mobile Home. I talked to Michael, but Michael tried to find some place for move my trailer. Mr. McConkie talked to Mr. Winkle. I think he don't want to pay my trailer. He want to move it. But for WY, it's not easy to move it. So we can find anything right now for moving. And that date to take it off is really close. We have only 3 months. And for moving my trailer, and at least I need 1 month for move all my stuff and move the trailer. So I have 2 months only for do all that. So I need the answer, even is give me the money or move it. But we need people to start working very hard for that. And I think if you can help for something to contact him and move more faster, I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again. My name is Louise Brown. I live at 343 South, 750 East here in Layton. And I've left a paper for you to look at, but I wanted you to understand that in case you're wondering why Cedarwood folks keep coming back here, it's because city leaders set a precedence a long time ago that there would be help for them from Layton City. You can see in that letter that I gave you, way back in May, I had a good conversation with Lon Crowell, who is your Economic Development Deputy Director. And in that conversation, we went back and forth talking about how to help the folks. But in one of his emails to me, he said, it is the responsibility of the property owner to properly assist his residents if he should decide to move forward developing his property. I have that in an email from him. So back in May, we were believing that there would be, some guidance and some encouragement from the city to Mr. Winkle to help these folks, right? That was in May. In June, Mayor Petro came, appreciated you doing it. And at Nicole Malin Cedarwood home, there were a couple of folks there along with her and myself. And in that, she said, we've told Mr. Winkle from the beginning that it is his responsibility to relocate his people. And when I asked her, does that mean eviction? She said, no, I don't think that's what the council had in mind at all. And we appreciate that. We agree with you completely. From Gary Crane, we appreciated your interview with Telemundo. And you can go look at that yourself. That was aired on July 22nd. And in that television interview, he said the city's part in all that is that we will not grant any approvals until these folks are moved, and then bless you. You said successfully moved to another location. So all of this is setting expectation to these folks that somehow you're going to inspire Mr. Winkle to help them relocate. And now you're hearing their stories. These people have they have 3 months to get out, and there's nothing. The most important, one of the most interesting ones is on the back of that paper in that blue box you can see. This is from your 2019 Redevelopment Agency report. And on page 13 of that report, this report is generated by the city's Community and Economic Development Department. And if you read number 6 in that list, it says that the city is, quote, currently in discussions with the landowner so we can relocate the mobile home park. We are in the beginning stages of negotiation, but it seems very promising. The landowner we are talking to is in Layton, and he's excited to work out a deal with us. And in this report, you would get the impression that Layton City leaders acknowledge their role in the relocation of the residents, and they engage in negotiations with the landowner for that purpose. And the burning question tonight is, so what happened? When were those, quote, very promising negotiations held? Who held them? What was decided? What's the follow-up? And how do those 2019 negotiations help these residents today? And why are we down to 3 months and there's still nothing for them? Empty promises. I've talked with Mr. McConkey on behalf of some of these people. They're right. There are empty promises. There's not anything more than that. I really feel like they're being led along until they have to be out. And then they're gone. And then you don't have to worry about them anymore because they're gone. And that's not good practice. The residents, the reason that they keep showing up, the conclusion that I've drawn is that they believed in these intentional statements of very promising negotiations, that he should properly assist his residents, it is his responsibility to relocate his people, and that they will be successfully moved. And the question to be asked tonight is, do you intend to protect them from the financial devastation that they're facing, some of them in 3 months? I hope I've established in your minds tonight the fact that the reason they're here is there's been some expectation established, and they're looking to you to fulfill it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do we want to comment? Because I do know first off, we have stepped in, and we've had the negotiations, and we did get him to come. And I just want to be clear that when this was bubbled up even more, and we found out how the communication was not there, we did hold that meeting here in this chamber so that we could air it out and really fully understand and have him here so that he heard it, we heard it. And I recognize that he probably doesn't work on the same time frame as the majority of the rest of us, but we're going to continue to press. We'll continue to press. And I know myself and one other woman that can help these folks with assistance. I've had this discussion here this morning, and I don't know if this is appropriate, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. I haven't had a chance to discuss this at all with the city council nor the city manager, but I can assure you that because of the fact that what I'm hearing here tonight, it supports what our thought was, that she and I will come around, teach one of the 14 homeowners and actually gather the information ourselves so that we know and understand, so that hopefully we can then solicit the help through the state and be able to make sure that we get these folks taken care of. I know that there is some assistance there, but we have to make sure we have the correct data. And the only way we're going to know that is if we have these people involved with collecting that data from the individuals. So with that, I will ask the question. I'm sure most of you work, and that probably the evening or a weekend would be the best time. Am I correct in that assumption? We will have a Spanish interpreter already because we've heard you guys and I've understand what the problem's been. But I want you to know that we are limited as a government or as a governing body here within our city. We are limited, but I am reaching out and we are trying to get other resources for them. I'm not going to commit to any dollar amount or anything like that, but I can tell you that those discussions have been taking place. So it may appear that things are not happening on their side, but I can tell you on our side, we are being proactive.
Excellent. And thank you for having a translator there, because although Mr. McConkey stood up here and promised one, there wasn't one. There were no translators in the discussions that he had with each family, and it wasn't in their home. Although he said that he would come to their homes, it wasn't in their homes. He had them come to the office there on site. There was no translator. So about 90% of the folks are Spanish-speaking folks. So a lot of them had that interview with no translation services. And they were making life-changing discussions and decisions in that meeting with no translator. Some of them brought their children to translate. Some of those children were rather traumatized by that experience. So thank you for having a translator. It's critical.
Okay. Well, thank you. Hopefully you'll understand that we are. Mr. Jensen, did you want to add anything to that?
I'd be delighted.
I apologize that I didn't have this discussion with you earlier, but.
Yeah, I think that might be a subject for discussion in a different setting, but as to the wisdom of that. But I guess my general comment would be the lack of knowledge about what's happening or not happening doesn't make it true. There have been ongoing discussions with, as recent as yesterday, with the owner and potential developer of the property, and the issues that Mrs. Brown is raising are among the very issues that have been discussed. In the past, I have extended personal invitations to Mrs. Brown and others who are trying to advocate very well that if there are questions to reach out to me directly, and I'd be happy to tell them, give them an update on the status of the park's efforts, status of the owner's efforts, status of the developer's efforts, and the status of our efforts. I'm still happy to do that. And that's a better venue to have these kind of discussions, and that's just a suggestion and advice to you. But there are ongoing discussions. As recent as yesterday, as I said, the development team, we met with them on a Zoom call. They went through every individual, every homeowner of the 15 in phase one. They identified the requests in great detail that had been made by the residents. And they have indicated a willingness and an urgency of responding back to those. They are aware of the deadlines that they have committed to and that need to be met. I suspect, I can't speak for the developer, but I suspect that the reason there's been some delay is because they've tried to be comprehensive in the review and talk to everybody. And they've tried to attempt to categorize people's situations into like situations to the extent that that's possible, while still recognizing that each one of which they do, each person is individual. There's some people who own their trailers. There's some people who lease their trailers. There's some trailers that can be moved. There's some trailers that cannot be moved, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the things I believe they're trying to be careful about is to create a, whatever word you would like to use, successful, fair, appropriate resolution to people within a given category. They're trying to be very diligent about that. So I guess the shortest answer would be all of the things that I think you mentioned, Louise, are actually underway, and would be happy to report to those whenever you'd like to have that report. But things are happening, and I think each of those homeowners will be contacted very quickly. That was the expressed desire on the part of the development team yesterday.
Thank you. Thank you for that update too. Okay. Does anyone else wish to bring any type of citizen comment before us? Seeing that there's none, we'll go ahead and proceed then with item number 5, which is our consent items. We have 4 items on the consent agenda tonight. So with that, we'll go ahead and take, I guess, these. Let's go ahead and proceed with the first item, item number A. If you want to, you can make the motion now.
I'm asking the mayor, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would like to see the consent item number B pulled and dealt with separately.
It's fine. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, we can do that. Okay, there's been a motion to pull item B and deal with it separately.
I'll second.
It's been seconded. So council on favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. That means item number B will move to the bottom of the agenda item and deal with it separately. So with that, let's go ahead and start with item number A, which is the adoption of a Davis County natural hazardous pre-disaster mitigation plan. Let me turn the time over to Mr. Steve Garside, one of our city attorneys.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, Resolution 2146 addresses the adoption of the pre-disaster mitigation plan for Davis County. This is something that is done every 5 years. One of the main reasons that we adopt this, besides it being a requirement of federal law, but more important than that, is that if a disaster does happen, the adoption of this plan facilitates our residents' ability to access FEMA funds for any losses they may have incurred that were not covered by insurance. The entire document is about 300 pages. We included for the council's benefit just the executive summary. Layton's portion of that plan is about 11 pages. And as it states in it, this is an ongoing, in fact, it's been updated as recently as probably about 3 weeks ago. And so it is continually being updated. Basically, it has an inventory of potential problems and how we anticipate to prevent or at least mitigate any damages to those facilities, as well as anticipating the different natural hazards that we have in Layton City. Again, this is an ongoing document. We adopted it last in 2016, so you'll see it again in 2026. And we recommend the adoption of this resolution, which adopts that draft form of the pre-disaster mitigation plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Council, did you have any questions on this?
Were there any changes since the last time it was done?
In 2016?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So since the earthquake happened, did that change anything as far as how you were planning, how the planning document works?
No, because we had the earthquakes before, so we didn't, nothing, it didn't give us any additional insight other than it just reminded us that they happen here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Garside. Okay, let's move on to item number C, which is an interlocal agreement between Davis County cities and the Davis County. Actually, I have Mr. Terry Colburn, who will be presenting that for us this evening.
Bring before the council resolution 2151, an interlocal cooperative agreement between Davis County cities and Davis County for the UPDES general permit. Approval and adoption of city's updated stormwater management program. Resolution 2151 authorizes the mayor's signature on page 14 of the interlocal cooperation agreement for Layton City to participate jointly with Davis County to satisfy the requirements of the stormwater management program and adhere to EPA storm water phase 2 rule. We do this every 5 years, and then this is the year it's due again. So staff would recommend the council adopt Resolution 2151.
Council, do you have any questions regarding the stormwater management plan? Okay, thank you very much, Jerry.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, we'll now move on to item number D, which Mr. Dave Price, our Parks and Rec Department, our director, will be presenting an easement agreement between Layton City and the Utah Department of Transportation.
Thank you. This evening, I have the pleasure of introducing Resolution 2150, which, if approved, will provide for an easement agreement between Layton City and the Utah Department of Transportation at the future park site located at 1750 Weaver Lane. In July of 2010, the Case Creek Estates Homeowners Association dedicated 16.5 acres of property located at 1705 Weaver Lane to Layton City, with deed restrictions that the property was to be maintained as open space or as a city park. The Utah Department of Transportation desires to obtain a perpetual easement to use this part of the property for a trail to be located along the West Davis corridor as part of the West Davis Corridor project. The proposed trail will be part of a new 10-mile section of trail that will connect the existing Immigration Trail to Legacy Parkway Trail from West Point to North Salt Lake City. The city is willing to grant the perpetual easement to UDOT for the purpose of constructing, reconstructing, and maintaining the trail. Staff recommends the council adopt Resolution 2150, adopting and approving a perpetual easement agreement with the Utah Department of Transportation regarding property located at 1705 West Weaver Lane, owned by Layton City, and authorize the mayor to sign any necessary documents. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, that wraps up the items as far as our consent items that the council can act upon in a single motion. So knowing that, council, I'll look for action regarding the 3 items presented.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the pre-disaster mitigation plan update resolution 2146, the interlocal cooperative agreement for the updated stormwater management program resolution 2151, and the easement agreement between Layton City and the Utah Department of Transportation resolution 2150.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we adopt the consent items as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now we'll go on to item B of the consent items that we wanted to act upon separately. So with that, I'll have Mr. Gary Crane, our city attorney, present the acquisition or authorizing acquisition of real estate.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Resolution 2134 is a resolution that allows staff to move forward with the acquisition of certain property on the corner of Flint Street and Gentile. And if you can think about where that might be, it is on the southwest corner of Flint and Gentile, just on the Barlow property. The Barlows are here tonight. Before the city can go forward or move forward with an acquisition, we have to jump through certain hoops or punch certain buttons. One of them being that a letter needs to be sent to the property owner, identifying certain rights they have, identifying the ombudsman, the fact that they have the opportunity of presenting their case to the ombudsman and mediating the case through the ombudsman. Also, it indicates that no decision can be made by staff relative to the value of the property, which we will have to do an appraisal on, nor are we able to give final acceptance or approval to the acquisition of the property without your permission and without you okaying and approving that. This resolution tonight allows us to move forward with negotiations. Negotiations for the acquisition or for the condemnation or use of eminent domain in acquiring the property. In my time here at Layton City, I think we've used eminent domain maybe once or twice, but never through a complete court action or court case. We've always managed to negotiate a reasonable price and reasonable value for the property. These things are hard because acquisitions are always hard. 9 years ago, Steve Garside and I walked along Gentile Street. And at that time, we thought that the improvements that were being made there would at least last a few years. We had to do some widening. We approached many of the properties going from Main Street all the way down to almost the Syracuse border. And we had to acquire property to widen Gentile Street and to put improvements on Gentile Street. You might remember that. It was quite a while ago. This parcel of property we thought we could leave. We talked to the property owner at that time, and at that time it was acceptable to push it as far as we could possibly push it before the acquisition of this parcel was actually needed for a right-hand turn lane. Now, if you sit at the corner on any given day, you'll find that that corner backs up all the way from Flint Street, all the way back down the street, almost to King Street. So it's quite a ways. So the time has come and has been put off for quite a while to seek the acquisition of that property. Engineering has put a lot of thought into it, a lot of effort into it, and has reduced the amount of property to be taken in a number of different ways. The plan, if Steve had been able to show it to you before, shows that we have pressed on Rocky Mountain Power, for example, to put in a metal pole, which would be entirely within the right-of-way, rather than having a wooden pole with a guy wire going back into the property, which should take another 20 feet back into the property. They've shortened the actual turn lane so that it will work, it will function engineering-wise, but it will not encumber as much of the property as possible. And so there have been a number of steps taken to try and mitigate the negative impacts, but in reality, the traffic doesn't diminish and is only going to get worse and is going to compound itself as West Davis Corridor. You know, you would think that would take a lot of the traffic off. There will still be east-west traffic traveling down that road. And we look to our professionals to make the decisions as to whether or not these improvements are needed. And it would be nice if we could say, no, you know, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings over this. We don't want to go after any parcel of property. All we can say is we don't want to do that unnecessarily. But there comes a time when we're pushed to do that for safety reasons, for the economy of individuals who travel that street, and for the remainder of the city. There has to be something done on that corner. And so we've started negotiations with the property owner, and we have. I'm glad actually that it was dropped out of the consent items to be its own item, simply because one of the requirements is that the property owner be able to talk to the council about it. And that's one of the steps that you must go through before you actually approve our ability to go out and negotiate for the acquisition of the parcel. And so with that, I invite you to listen to what the property owner has to say. There are two aspects to taking a parcel of property. First of all, it has to be necessary for public good. And it is a very important public good in this particular situation. And secondly, it has to be receive fair market value for the acquisition of that property. And usually the dispute or the concern is that fair market value be properly appraised and properly given. Whether or not this is a public improvement is pretty easy. It's a street. It's an essential corner. It's an essential turn lane. Our engineers have made that determination a long time ago, and we're just actually catching up with that decision with this acquisition. And so with that, staff would recommend your approval of 2134. And I want to make it clear that before we ever file an action in condemnation, this does not authorize us to file that action without your consent or approval. We've got to have your consent or approval. before we can actually acquire the property for a price, even if the price is the appraised value, we will come back to you and get that approval from you to pay that price. And so this is essentially a step in the process that allows us to move forward with the negotiation. But there will be more to it if we end up in having to take either of those steps, and we hope never to have to take the second step. So thank you. Any questions that I can answer for you up front? No? Okay.
I think we'd be interested in hearing from the property owner.
Thank you.
I really do appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, and I promise no one's going to hurt my feelings. This isn't about feelings. This is about what's best for the neighborhood. There are 136 driveways that enter onto Gentile Street from Main Street to Bluff. And you can't treat Gentile Street the same way that you do Antelope. It just isn't the same. It doesn't constitute the same amount of, it's a neighborhood. And my feeling is that if the center, that medium was taken out between Gentile Street and it was a three-way stop, it would alleviate a lot of this problem. Now, I've said to you fellows several times, let's kick this down the road until we know what the impact is from the West Davis corridor. And to me, that just seems logical. I realize that the engineers are experts in their fields, but I've lived there for 34 years. I'm an expert in that corner. There are 80 kids that walk along those streets. And I think if the speed limit is reduced and traffic is, I call it pushed onto Layton Parkway, that's a better road for people to go quickly down. And the increase, if the speed limit was increased there, it would really alleviate a lot of the problem that we're seeing on Gentile Street. I don't see, as we have watched traffic, it's about 3 out of every 10 cars are turning. I did our own traffic study, hired a group to do that. And I thought I shot myself in the foot because guess what weekend it was? It was Mother's Day weekend. And we all know that everybody's going to J&J for flowers for their mothers. And so I thought, well, that was dumb. We should have done it a different day. But as those intersections are graded, A, B, C, and D, on the busiest weekend, it was a C. Now that should tell us something. There are other things we can do to take care of that. And I just feel like I know that because I participated in that, giving the property to the center of the road for the widening improvements of Gentile Street. And Duncan said then, well, if they don't need it, we're not getting it back. And I guarantee that if we don't need that right-hand lane, no one's going to be giving that property back to me. Right now, it's difficult enough to get in and out of that driveway. There are cones that they've put out to show where it is the sidewalk begins. And there is no way I can get in and out of that driveway without doing a 5-point turn. I would appreciate it if this could be pushed down the road till we know what the West Davis corridor will do for us and see if that will make a big difference in the traffic. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Robert Manson. I'm legal counsel for Ms. Barlow. My address is in Salt Lake City. I do a great deal of eminent domain work. I'm not sure exactly what this resolution, what what you're being asked to vote on tonight. But one of the requirements before you can authorize the exercise of eminent domain is a notice be given for a public meeting to the landowner. That has not been done. So if the resolution is asking for authority to exercise the power of eminent domain, that would be an unlawful act, and that would be challenged in court. And I invite you to look at Utah Code Annotated 78B-6-304. Also, I think the impact to this property will be substantial. As Mrs. Barlow mentioned, cones have been placed there. I understand some of you have gone by, at least some of you have gone by to see where this new right-of-way line will be. The impacts to this property are going to be very significant, and that will be challenged. And we believe in court. What at least what's been proposed is that the value of just the property that would underlie the new right-of-way be paid for, and there's nothing, no compensation for what's called severance damages. In eminent domain, a landowner is entitled to two methods of compensation: the value of the property that's actually taken, and any resulting damages to the remaining property, which is called severance damages, a decrease in value as a result of, as Ms. Barlow said, the difficulty of getting in and out of the property in the after condition, the impacts of the road being that much closer to the property. This is one of the oldest homes in Layton, and it'd be a horrible travesty to impact this house even further. We would ask that any effort to acquire this property by eminent domain be put off until the West Davis corridor is completed. Right now, you have a lot more traffic. You have the truck traffic that's otherwise not permitted on Gentile that goes up and down there, permitted during the construction of West Davis corridor. This may be necessary, and we may be back here, after the completion of West Davis corridor. But we would ask that this be put off until then, and then we can address the situation and see what the necessity of that may be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's one more, I guess. Well, this isn't really a public comment, right? So unfortunately,
it's not a public hearing.
Right.
And so
being that it's, actually, if you're a family member, you're welcome to, but I don't. That's true. You guys are related to everybody.
When is the meeting for public comment on this exchange?
Well, we don't know yet because it depends on the action and how we proceed. So there might not be a public, well, technically, I guess Gary can correct me, but I don't think there will be, right?
if we advance with an action in eminent domain, there would be a public hearing, and individuals would be able to speak. Specifically, Mrs. Barlow, we're concerned about what she has to say, but yes, there would be additional opportunity to speak at that time.
Well, who can I talk to in private then about possible impact to my property, which is on the opposite corner of Flint and Gentile? If I understand, power lines will be adjusted, which may cross the corner of my property. I have questions about that. I have questions about the safety of westbound traffic trying to turn left on Flint Street. If there's also cars coming, turning right on that turn lane without a merge, and I understand there's no merge lane proposed or planned there.
So could I recommend that you contact the city engineer, and we can arrange an appointment for you to meet with him? That would probably be the best way to go, rather than for you to go ahead and state everything right now and have us try and make notes and try and answer your questions, which we're not going to be able to do right now.
If you're voting on this tonight, then my comments will be.
No, this actually allows. We're not voting on whether or not to take the property by eminent domain. We're voting to allow us to acquire that turn lane on the right-hand side. That's all we're going to be doing. And so, if you want to speak to the engineer, we can get you a number to speak to the engineer.
I will be getting the number then.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
regarding the attorney was right. We will be back here again. Right now, the engineer has opined that the capacity is such that we need that turn lane right now today. He has also opined, because of a study, that even if West Davis Quarter comes in, that we will still be in a position of badly needing that right-hand turn lane. So that study has already been done, because the last thing we wanted to do, quite frankly, is to acquire any property from anybody down Gentile. And so he's advanced, he's done that study. We can bring that information back to you. If you require us to bring that information prior to an acquisition, we can certainly do that. We didn't have an opportunity to talk about all the details of the area that we're using as a turn lane, and we could certainly do that, at some time in the future. But your expert has opined that that is needed in order to get people to drain Gentile, which is getting worse all the time, and to be able to take people to the south. And it is not going to be any different. The damages may be more in the future, because at the rate property costs are going up, the damages are certainly going to be greater, even if we were just pay for the underlying land. And severance damages and the damages that the attorney's talking about, the actual cost of the road, are all determined by appraisal. And that's what we fight about. That's what lawyers fight about. That's what we get paid to fight about is value, right? And so that would be the issue, would be value. And the way we sort that out is through getting qualified appraisers who are trained in takings appraisals to appraise the property and give us a value on it. And they would take into consideration all of the things that Mr. Mansfield talked about. And we've done it hundreds of times in the city, and we'll do it again probably hundreds of times into the future. Maybe I won't, but there will be others that will take my place that will. But it will always be a need, because we're growing. Layton City is not standing still. The most recent census, somebody said tonight, was 82,000? Mm-hmm. And in another 5 to 10 years, if we go as far down the road as we were 9 years ago, we're going to be up around 100,000. And so if we wait and see how West Davis Quarter goes, and this is already full, we're going to be back here again doing exactly the same thing. So what we're asking, what staff is asking, is let us proceed forward with the acquisition of this property to see if we can come to an agreement with the Barlows. That's our first thrust, is to negotiate, come to an agreement, and that's certainly what we want to do. She's well represented. Mr. Mansfield's qualified. We've been on opposite side of the tables before, and so we're just asking for the opportunity to be able to negotiate with them, to be able to come to a value, to get an appraisal and come to a value on it.
Okay, council, is there any question or discussion here?
So this isn't a public hearing, but are we allowed to make comments? Sure. Okay, so when I went to college, I took a lot of theory, and I always look at the traffic studies as theory. And when you get out and you hit the road, and on this one, literally hit the road, sometimes theories go out the window. I've lived in West Layton now for 8 years, and I travel this road many, many, many times a week. I went out earlier this week, and I stood on that corner during a train, the children going to school, people going to work. And the problem I see is the train. Traffic moved fine until the train, or until the crossing guard entered the intersection across from the school. It slowed traffic down. I ran an errand, and I came back and got stuck by another train going westbound that blocked traffic all the way up to the bridge on Gentile up this direction. I don't know that this turn lane is going to solve the issues on Gentile. I travel at westbound, and I have been stopped at Angel Street, and it is backed up all the way to 2200 West, going westbound. So an eastbound turn lane isn't going to do anything for that. I don't know, and I would like to see if, as Mrs. Barlow mentioned, removing the island is what the impact would be, and if that's even been studied. I know that a lot of the issues that people run into is when they turn westbound off of Flint Street, left onto Gentile, where they have to merge, especially if the train has stopped traffic and now people are going. It's very difficult to go westbound, turning left off of Flint, not eastbound going to Flint. Ever since I've lived out here, all I've heard is all this traffic on Gentile, because it's getting worse. It's getting worse on 2200. It's getting worse on 200 North in Kaysville, which I avoid completely. The parkway is starting to back up now in certain locations. Traffic is picking up. And we keep saying it's people from Syracuse coming up into our city. I agree with Mrs. Barlow. Let's wait. Let's see we're so close, not necessarily the West Davis corridor, but we are so close to opening 2700 West that will go right to the parkway. That's a straight drop to Layton Parkway and the freeway. I don't understand why people go on Flint Street except to reach the parkway. And why would you go 30, 35 miles an hour up Gentile, knowing the train's going to happen? My habits are changing, and I am using the parkway a whole lot more because of train issues on both Hillfield and Gentile. I personally think that this is not, as you worded, Gary, is not necessary for the public good at this point.
Okay. Council, do you have any other comments here?
I have one, and echo Councilmember Fitzpatrick mentioned about residents will call me or email me about traffic, and my go-to answer has been the go-to answer that I've been given since I've been sitting here, is that when the West Davis corridor is complete, the traffic on Gentile will be reduced by 40%. So I guess I'm confused as whether this study that you're talking about with the engineer with the right-hand turn is part of that, or if it's, I'm confused that I'm not getting the correct information, or maybe it's new information, and that's fine too, but that's been my go-to answer. And like Councilmember Fitzpatrick mentioned, people from Syracuse and West Point trying to get to the freeway, the best way is on Gentile, and that will be going away. So and Mrs. Barlow is correct in that you don't get a chance to, let's try it. If it doesn't work, well, it doesn't go back. So that's where I am tonight.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, may I just confirm, I think it's been stated, but just to emphasize, the decision that staff's asking you to make tonight is not binding in any way. It's an authorization to continue to have discussions with Mrs. Barlow. It's an opportunity to continue to discuss the design, if the council would like to do that, and to dive in depth into the proposed design. It doesn't dictate anything with regard to cost, price, timing, design, etc. It simply is a requirement of state law to allow us to continue to negotiate in good faith. We've had multiple discussions with Mrs. Barlow, and she's been very gracious, as has Mr. Mansfield. We've appreciated that opportunity to do that. I believe that we're making progress in that effort. I think the city has a well-distinguished history. Now, I'm obviously biased. With all the needs in the city, we do not have any kind of a history of asking for things that are not needed. This project, the need for this project started 15 years ago. That's how long this right-hand turn lane has been discussed, and multiple professional engineers have indicated that this is a piece of the overall solution to the problem on Gentile. There has to be lights put in, et cetera, et cetera. All of this is largely focused on avoiding the need at some point in the time to widen Gentile. To widen Gentile would be significant in its impact in terms of effect on abutting properties because of the nature of it, the historic nature of it, because of the closeness of some of the houses, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a piece of a long-term strategy. But like I say, I think we're we're getting just a bit respectfully ahead of the court because we're talking about design issues that will all get worked out through discussion and the pricing. We're simply asking now to be able to continue to have the discussions with the council's blessing and authorization to do so. It doesn't bind the council to any position, and it doesn't bind the homeowners to any position. All of those issues will be brought back, as Gary said, to you. You'll have a chance to review all of those and determine whether what the city staff is proposing professionally is accurate or not, and what's being proposed in terms of a settlement with Mrs. Barlow is accurate or not.
Okay. I'm actually going to step in here and because Councilman Day was not able to be here, he did send me an email and asked specifically that it gets read tonight. I would delay, but, he did ask that it be read tonight regarding the Barlow issue on Flint and Gentile. So his statement is, I travel this route most every day and most days more than a few times a day. I pass it all times of the day and have a good idea of how it functions. I am opposed to the acquisition of the right-of-way for the turn lane because I don't see a need for it. I don't see the justification for it based on the right turn problem. The real backup occurs only when there is a train blocking the road. There are some backups because of the school, but they are more temporarily than the train. I don't think there are sufficient backups for the right turn. All of this aside, I think the problem can be solved with what there is, with what's there. There are 3 lanes in each direction there now. All that is needed at the 3 lanes is to have 3 lanes in each direction. If the concrete medium were removed and the lanes redone, is what he said, it would provide the needed lanes in each direction, including the south turn lane. The traffic poles are already in place. The lights can be made to stop the traffic in all directions like a normal intersection. Stopping the westbound traffic will, in my opinion, not only significantly back up and will resolve, excuse me, let me reread that. Stopping the westbound traffic will, in my opinion, not cause significant backups and will solve the problem of merging traffic into an ongoing traffic. The merging traffic into the westbound lane is a bigger problem than any problem caused by the right turn going south. Layton City has a history of not using eminent domain except in cases that are absolutely necessary. In this situation, the use of eminent domain would cause an unnecessary adverse impact on the Barlow's residential property. We should only do it if it is absolutely needed to solve the problem with as little effect on private property as necessary. We can do this, as stated above, without taking additional property. So, in essence, I think what Tom's trying to say is if we eliminate that medium lane, use that space to create the 3 lanes wide, that you'll be able to solve the problem because you'll have traffic actually stopped and not have to dodge the bullet of trying to merge. And I know myself, obviously I live here, right just down the street from the Barlows. And pretty much the observation that everybody's come to, I think the train is the biggest issue. We won't be able to solve that unless we end up going to an overpass. And that's the last thing I think any of us in this area would like to see because, as Mr. Jensen stated, this is our historical district. It's one of the few areas that has the original homes from the settlers. And I think we all want to protect that, including myself. So
Can I make a suggestion then? I see the way things are going. They're not, you don't have to be blind to see the way things are going. But my recommendation would be this. You've not heard the engineer's information yet.
We haven't.
And really you need to, because none of us are engineers, including me. I'm glad I'm not because I hate numbers. But the engineer's recommendations are more than just theory. This engineer doesn't make recommendations based just on theory, just so you know. He has done the studies. He knows what's going on. You at least need to have that information before you can actually make a decision of whether or not to take property. Let me recommend this, that we want to continue to negotiate with the Barlows. We don't want to be cut off from, if it is necessary, it's necessary to do now. Negotiation does not hurt. The thing you're uncomfortable with is the eminent domain piece. Let's take the eminent domain out of the resolution and allow the city staff to proceed forward with negotiation on the property. It doesn't take eminent domain off the table, period, because cities always have eminent domain, but you would have control over when you bring that into the mix, if you ever did, which I don't know that you'll ever have to. So my recommendation would be that you allow us to continue, because we are making progress on negotiations with the Barlows. It's not going to be any easier another 10 years from now, 5 years from now. And so if this is the right decision to make, let us continue to negotiate. Take eminent domain out of the resolution, and at least let us negotiate for the purchase of the property. If we can't do it, we can't do it. But if we can, then it would be good. Let us also bring back to you information regarding, that we have all heard, regarding the status of that intersection. Because, like I say, none of us are engineers. I said the same thing. When we first started negotiating, I said, can't we just take that whole cement stuff out of the center there and just, put an extra lane? I said the same thing to Steve, and I know he thought I'm an idiot because here's an attorney trying to redesign an intersection. But he came back with the right answers, with exactly what I needed to hear. I went through about 4 different scenarios that my brain could understand. But he has the answers, and you need to hear those answers before you say, no, it's impossible to do, don't do it. And then at the same time, allow us to continue to negotiate this without eminent domain hanging over their heads immediately with the resolution of this sort. And if you'll let us do that, we can move forward with this. And at the same time, before we actually make an acquisition, we have to come back to you anyway to present to you exactly what we've negotiated. But that would allow us to appraise the property, to let you know what the value of that property is. Who knows if what Mr. Mansfield says is true, and an appraiser comes back and says, good heavens, you have to buy the whole house. You may decide you don't want to do that, okay? But at least it allows us to get a handle on value so that we can take a look at it now and make an educated decision on not only value, but also have the engineer come back to you with what is necessary, as far as the information that I've heard that you haven't yet. So that would be my recommendation. You don't have to go with it, but I really would encourage you to let us continue to roll forward, at least with negotiation on this.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Help me understand, Gary, then you're already in negotiation. So you've already been negotiating with the Barlows. So what's different with what you just said versus if we don't do anything, you're still in negotiations? Is that?
Oh, no.
Because we've already been negotiating.
Say what you said tonight, which is, this is not a public purpose. That's the end of my negotiation with the Barlows. I won't go any farther because you've essentially killed the deal. And what I'm telling you is that you haven't heard what the engineer has to say yet about whether or not there really is a public purpose to this. If you want to hear that and you want us to continue to negotiate with the Barlows, you've got to make a decision to allow us to do that. Because if you don't tonight, we're going to stop. And we're not going to talk to them again until you tell us we can talk to them again. And that just doesn't make any sense. What makes sense is to allow us to continue to negotiate. And but if you shut it down and say, no, we've decided that there is no public purpose in this, then you've become the engineer. You've made that decision, and we stop. I won't go out and negotiate anymore.
So, can I make a comment? Yeah. Councilman.
So can we meet middle ground and table it for 2 weeks till December 2nd? I mean, it's going to be the holidays. I doubt you're going to meet with them much. To get an appraisal might take longer than that anyway. And have the engineer come back on the 2nd of December and present, and then move forward from there.
You can do anything you want because you're the city council. But
Now,
what I'd
that's
like,
not always true.
but
Go ahead.
the answer is yes, you can.
Okay.
So my question still is, you've got a traffic report, traffic study. We are two years from completion of the West Davis corridor, and then we'll have a real study because it'll be real traffic versus a traffic study. Is that, I guess we're just so close to really knowing. And then the connection, what you talked about, I just think that we're close to real numbers versus, I'm not saying the traffic study is not a real number, but like actual real life traffic.
Yeah, so you can do whatever you want. But what I'm telling you is that if you don't approve our moving forward with this, with negotiating, we'll stop. We'll stop until you guys say you need to go forward with negotiation on this. We're telling you that we would like to proceed forward with negotiation at least, and let the engineer come and tell you. And you may decide after you hear what Steve's got to say, you may say, you know what? We don't agree with Steve. We think that we need to wait the 2 years. But what I'm saying is if you say, no, we don't believe that there's an impact, even if you say we have to wait for 2 years, I don't think I'm going to do anything beyond that because I really don't have a position. So.
Okay. I know that, I know, Alex, you want us to comment, and I also want to, I know the Barlows have raised their hand too, so I think since tonight really is our opportunity to hear them, I think that I want to entertain them jumping into the dialogue as well. So do you want to go first or wait till?
No, I would just echo what Gary said. We're happy to do whatever direction the council gives us. The traffic information or impact studies that are done are not static, meaning they don't take a snapshot in time. They actually look into the future. And so they take into the professional ones, which are the ones we hire, are individuals that take into consideration what the future projections are, both in our community and in adjoining communities, based on their development patterns, what their zoning is, et cetera. They work very hand in hand with Wasatch Front Regional Council on the 2040 or 2050 plans. And so they really look at the impact or lack thereof of new development like West Davis Corridor, things that are in people's general transportation plans. And out of that, it is a little bit of a crystal ball, I think. It's a science, and they try to make a best guess as to what the impacts are going to be. So it's not an exact science, but we understand the issues. Like I say, our intention as the staff, for what it's worth, and I hope that Ms. Barlow would concur, is that we've tried to be very cordial. We haven't pressed, we haven't threatened, we haven't cajoled. We've been very open to and talked about a lot of different solutions to address some of the legitimate concerns that she has. And our intention is to continue to do that. I mean, our hope is that we would be able to find a fair solution that both parties could feel good about. I mean, that's always the end goal in this. But again, we're happy to do whatever the council's comfortable with. In our professional opinion, it is needed. Again, we don't have any history of asking for things that aren't needed, and because of there's a large thing. But we'll take whatever direction you do and happily apply it. And if that means to table it, we're happy to do that and continue to have a dialogue and have an opportunity to explain more of the science behind it to you guys. And then again, as always, we'll do whatever you decide. If it's everything or nothing, and we'll move forward. But we do think it's needed. We wouldn't be here asking for it.
All right, thank you. Did one of you guys want to stand back up?
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak again. I think traffic studies, as mentioned, they are a little bit of a crystal ball. You are, to some degree, basing it on what your projected increase in population. But there is still a lot of conjecture there, and you can get big disagreements between what one expert says and another expert says. That happens all the time. I think your own practical experience should weigh in on this as to whether this should or should not move forward. And candidly, with all due respect, unless this council is willing to authorize eminent domain, we aren't in a position where we're going to negotiate. I mean, the Barlow family does not want this. They will not voluntarily agree to sell the property to the city for this turn lane. It's going to have to be in an eminent domain context. I mean, that is the only way it moves forward. We just do not want this. And we do not think the council should move forward on this. Let's wait the 2-year period until we know what the actual traffic patterns are, both with 2700 West, which I think someone said will come online in 6 months from now, and then the potential of what may happen with West Davis Corridor and potential with the train. I mean, I think no one wants an overpass. Mm-hmm. Maybe the potential of an underpass with the train. That's something that could work as well, and maybe more willing to have occur. But we would ask that no action be taken on this, that this matter not move forward until completion of West Davis Corridor and 2700 West. We can see what the real impacts are. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Council, is there any more deliberation on this?
Madam Mayor?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Mansfield states that there is not going to be any negotiation with the city. Well, I went out to Mrs. Barlow's home and she provided me some things the city had been trying to do to try to negotiate this. And my question for Mr. Mansfield was that in good faith?
Was what in good faith?
Was Mrs. Barlow's discussions with the city about potential non-eminent domain outcomes for this, were those done in good faith?
Well, they were done under the threat of eminent domain, that the city staff have threatened that eminent domain would be used absent that. And no, we don't want this to happen. What Ms. Barlow did was done in good faith, but if the city is not going to authorize eminent domain, are we going to continue, or are we going to voluntarily sell the property? No, it will not happen.
Okay. So it sounds like there isn't much negotiation.
Can I say something? I think up until about 3 days ago, we were told it was happening regardless. So that good faith was, if this is happening, let's make the best of this situation.
Madam Mayor,
sure.
With all due respect, that statement is simply not true. And what Mr. Mansfield said is simply not true. The city staff, in all the discussions I've been a party to or aware of, has never threatened it. We have said that the resolution that is approved is dictated by state language, and we have to put that in there to cover all contingencies, but never once have we inferred or suggested. The staff has said, I was asking a meeting with Mrs. Barlow and Mr. Mansfield and a real estate representative they had, if I thought there were any other solutions or if this was a fait accompli. And what I said to him in front of you was that this was not a fait accompli. The city was very open to finding solutions that would work for everybody. I did say, however, that the staff believes this is something that needs to take place. That's a much, much different thing than just sitting here tonight and misrepresenting that statement that the city has threatened eminent domain. That is an absolutely false statement. So I beg to differ, but I think it's important just for the council to understand that. And that's continued to be our position.
Okay, we respect that. And I think at this point, council, basically we have two decisions to make. One, either adopt this resolution and allow the staff to go ahead and proceed to gather information, or two, take an opposite action and perhaps wait until you guys have suggested, until the corridors come through and look at it at that time. It seems to me that if we postpone it 2 years, that you would then be, and I'm going to ask this question directly so we know and it's on the record, at that point you would be very negotiable and not threaten and not take us to eminent domain. Is that the feeling I'm hearing from you?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So in other words, if this council decides to postpone the decision as requested by the family and see what the impact is from the West Davis corridor opening up and 2700, and that if our studies still show or our engineers still prove that it is necessary, at that point, you're willing to come to a satisfactory outcome for both parties. It's got to be a win-win on both sides and not go to eminent domain. Is that what I heard?
If the data supports that, I believe, yes, it would be, the family would be willing to consider that. We're not going to take everything at just face value. But yes, we are, based on the data, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, well, I mean, council, I'll let you guys make this decision here, but I know that we're kind of sitting here with we haven't heard the facts on the city side, in all honesty. We have heard your statement now, which I do appreciate, and we do want to hear. So now that we know we've had that information out here, I think it's now upon us to decide which two actions you want to take.
Madam Mayor, we talked about, Councilmember Fitzpatrick talked about tabling this to the next meeting, so I'd like to see the engineering data. We haven't seen it. I mean, that'd be the fair thing to do. It's been talked about, but I'd love to, and that we owe that to our citizens as well, to see that before we decide to approve this or not. It would have been great to have that tonight, but.
Yeah, and I realize that. I mean, time ran out and we didn't have a chance to see that. So, that's, to me, a logical conclusion. But at the same time, I have to rely on the council members here to make the decision and to make a proposal here on how you want to proceed.
Madam Mayor, I think it's important for us to make sure that we're not acting as engineers on the spot without hearing what the city staff has to say. I met with Mrs. Barlow. I wanted to hear what she had to say because she's an important part of our city, and that's an important area of our city. And she gave me all the information. I wrote down all my notes on it because she has an important voice. And I haven't made a decision on what I'm going to do yet because I haven't seen the other side of the coin. I have great faith in Steve and the work that the engineering department does, and I think it would be illogical for us to make a decision on this without at least hearing what they have to say. That allows Councilman Day to be here to help him make the decision as well. I would feel much more comfortable if we had a full 6 members of the mayor and the council and all the information in front of us before we make any decisions moving forward. That doesn't necessarily mean that negotiations are probably not going to, like Councilmember Fitzpatrick said, negotiations aren't going to be on the forefront until we meet again anyway. And so I think that gives us a chance to get all the information that we need. And so I appreciate you coming and I appreciate you reaching out. That's exactly how this should be, because the last thing I want to do as a member of the city council is to be party to taking property that doesn't need to be taken. Because again, you can't remedy that. The money is not really, the remedy for a takings is fair compensation, but that's just monetary and it's never going to be able to come back again. And so if there are any other ways for us to be able to accomplish what we want, then we should look at them. And so I want to hear what engineering has to say, and I'm in favor of tabling this and then having a discussion, full disclosure, everything on the table, and then making a decision on whether we think it's in the best interest of the city to move forward.
And I have a question, because I think one of the consistent things about Gentile that we're hearing is the trains. And I know we've got an engineer traffic study. Is there some way to get something from Front Runner and the train, Union Pacific or whatever, that tells the number of times the train passes that track, what the length of those cars are? Because I got to tell you, I sat through, traffic was probably past Angel Street trying to go east on one train because it went on forever. We can have cars on the ground, but if they're being stopped because of a train, and that's why we're having the backup and the holdup, I'd like to know if there's some data on that particular issue as well, based on the concern with the street. And if that could be provided us in a method of tabling, and then, 2 weeks or 4 weeks, how long it would take to gather that information. I know we're pushing into the holidays, so that's a concern. But I'm in favor I still don't think it's needed because I travel that road all the time and I don't see that many people turning right onto Flint Street. But I am willing to listen, like Councilmember Bloxham said, we've heard from Mrs. Barlow, we probably need to see the studies, but I think in addition to a traffic study, we need to understand the train situation on that street.
Okay, Councilman
Yeah, I can tell you
Thomas?
the trains are between 98 and 105 cars. I
They're
count
up to
them every
400. Excuse me, no, they're,
It's just a bad thing
they're
that I
400
do.
now.
And UTA is only 4.
Yeah.
I'm not. Decisions are made for a lot of reasons. I agree with everything that's been said. But I agree at this point we need to do something. I don't want to say I'm tired of talking, but I'm tired of talking. And I haven't said anything. You know, I think we know what we want to do. So if somebody will put in a motion, we can do it. I think we're I don't know the term, but we want to see certain things. And I don't know about Terry. I mean, you know, Steve, I didn't see it, sorry. I mean, 2 weeks. I mean, you've been doing this for 10 years, so in 2 weeks, I mean, we can get the information. I don't want to draw this out. I want to get it done one way or another and the best way that we can. So, and I don't want to tell you to jump through hoops that are going to create problems. Yeah, I mean,
So council, once again, I'll entertain a motion on action here on how you want to proceed tonight.
So Dave can be done and not have to listen to us
Unless
anymore.
anybody else want to comment? I mean, all of you have made a comment here. So, I mean, if you're ready, let's go ahead and make a motion.
Okay, Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion on this agenda item on the acquisition of interest of real property on the Barlows. The motion I would like to make is that we table this with a date of time certain of December 2nd, requesting the engineer to bring back the requested information.
And I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved in second. I can actually I'll do a roll call vote, just for the record. Okay, Councilman Bloxham?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Thomas?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. There you have it. We'll then reconvene on this topic on December 2nd, was it? Okay, thank you. Okay, that actually concludes all the items on our agenda unless anybody has any unfinished business at this time.
I do, and it relates to the same issue, but as I stood with the crossing guard on the one that is there on Flint that crosses from east to west, we're lucky he's still alive. I was there for 15 minutes and I saw 3 crosswalk violations with him in the middle of the street with children present, either turning right onto Flint Street or off of Flint Street onto Gentile. And he says it happens all the time. And I was just appalled that, and I will say 2 of the 3 were on their cell phone as they went through that intersection.
I actually just thought of one more. If you could add this to our studies, just so I'm aware of it, because obviously living in the area, I'm very familiar with what's taken place. And I know that it's probably only been, about 6 or 8 years since we actually changed that intersection anyway, didn't we? Because I know at that time it seemed like there was that bulb out so that we could have the utility box there. So I'm curious exactly when that was and what the purpose of changing that intersection at that time versus what we're discussing now. And that's something you can answer in our question going forward. Does that make sense, Steve? Okay, he got it. I know, Gary, you're questioning, but I know Steve picked up on it. Yeah.
That's why he's the engineer, so.
Okay, and then also I think just in that study, hopefully we'll be able to get the other citizens' comments so that, we can kind of hear their side or the impact that they might have as well. I think would be good when we reconvene with the information. Okay, with that, council, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Dave, wake
I
up.
third it. I second.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, since we won't see you until December.